Hello, this is saxophonist Antonio Parker, and this is A Conversation in Jazz, where we are promoting jazz through telling the stories. Our guest today is the multifaceted keyboardist, pianist, composer, arranger, producer, and musical director, Mr. Federico González Peña. We ask you to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell icon so we can let you know when we are posting another video or going live. We also ask you to donate to our Cash App in order to support the channel and help us to produce future videos. Our Cash App is $Jazzology 101. That's $Jazzology 101. Enjoy the video. Hi, this is saxophonist Antonio Parker, and this is A Conversation in Jazz. Our guest today is a multifaceted keyboardist, pianist, composer, arranger, producer, and musical director. He is a consummate musician who has performed and or recorded with the likes of Me'Shell NdegoOcello, Marcus Miller, Chaka Khan, Maxwell, Roy Hargrove, and many others. Please welcome my good brother, Mr. Federico González Peña. What's up, good brother?
Hey, man. How you doing?
How you doing, man? Welcome to A Conversation in Jazz.
That's right.
And you know, we were just talking before the show.
Oh, absolutely. We're both hoarse.
But yeah, man, man. You know, man, I'm gonna tell you where I first met you. Where I think I first met you.
I'd love to hear these stories.
Yeah. And my impression of you back then.
Okay, go on. Woo, I love this. It's my favorite kind of stuff, man.
Yeah, but so what we do here, we get to learn some of your stories, some of the things
Absolutely.
we don't know, and so I call it we learn the story behind the story.
I've seen the show.
Yeah. Okay. So my first question is, who is Federico?
Oh man, you could have come with a little bit of an easier one. I don't know how to parcel out that question. I mean, what do you mean exactly?
So, I mean, who do you like when you project yourself? Who do you want? I mean, who do you? I know you're a father. You're a musician, but you know, I had to learn this because I might tell you.
Tell me the story.
I first met you.
You whet my appetite,
yeah,
man. You took it away.
Yeah. So I think I first met you. I was at Howard. And I think y'all was at the Cafe Lautrec.
Right. Okay.
We used to play at
Adams Morgan.
So, and man, y'all was killing. I think Marshall Keys
And Rickman.
Yeah, Sean Rickman. I don't know who was playing bass. It might just been a trio.
It was me.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, man, but you were just so intense. I was afraid to like approach you. You were that intense, man, and serious. And I was like, wow. And for years I was like, when I saw you, I was kind of intimidated.
Really?
Yeah.
That's funny.
Until I got to know you and learned that you were really a warm, really lovable kind of cat. But I was really intimidated, man, because number one, the music was on a high level. And, you know, I'm in college, you know.
Right.
And trying to learn how to play jazz, you know. Mm-hmm. And then you just had an intense, like you were serious about the music and you know, you were just, oh, don't mess with me. And so I always had like a little nervousness when I saw you. And we did a project together. You graced my my first funk project, Planetary, man.
Yes,
and you put that magic on it, man. And I got to say, oh, this cat is cool, real down to earth kind of lovable kind of cat. So when I asked you who was,
Okay,
you know,
I got you.
Okay.
Yeah, that I'm glad you kind of framed that a little bit for me because it makes me a little easier my job in terms of responding to it.
Okay.
I mean, you know, I'm the kind of person that, I mean, the thing that you talk about in terms of like the seriousness or this sort of intensity is definitely always been there for me from the beginning. And I think what you were seeing in those days was sort of my zeal for protecting the music, or at least the process that we had, you know what I mean? So back then we rarely let people sit in with us, you know, and stuff like that. I mean, we did sometimes, but it wasn't so much of a free for all, you know, because we were interested in trying to develop something, and we also felt like that place was a little bit of a lab for us to try ideas and concepts, you know, and so you can't always be immersed in that, and then at the same time, sort of, for lack of a better term, diluted, you know, by inviting a lot of people, even if they're bad cats, you know. So, but I mean, for me, I think, you know, who I am is still, you know, a search, you know. I mean, I'm just a regular, flawed, painfully and deeply flawed human being. I saw something I wrote the other day, which it really struck me. I've always enjoyed writing, you know, essays and stuff. And long ago, I wrote an essay about Kobe Bryant. Years before he passed. Wow. Years before he passed. I had just seen him on that show that Jalen Rose has with it. I can't think of it. What's the name of it?
First Take?
Jelani and Rose or whatever. Jelani and Rose.
Yeah.
Him and this white cat, they have a show on ESPN, I think.
Yeah.
And Kobe was a guest, man. I was so inspired after I saw that I just wrote this whole essay, you know.
Wow.
And at the end of the essay, I just read it the other day, and it had a line on there that said that, you know, being oneself or finding oneself is both the easiest and the hardest thing to do in life. And I really, truly believe that, you know, I mean, because it's been a process, you know. It's been a process. There's a part of myself that's been kind of intact, perhaps a sphere of identity deep within me that has remained intact, you know, in terms of like the wonder that I have for music, you know, and that's like the best part of me. And then there's many layers of the things I'd like to scrape away and throw in the trash. But, you know, I'm just a regular cat, man. I'm just the you know. The dude that you know, I am the person that you glean and that you come to know. Yeah. And also many other things that, you know, sometimes I've struggled through and.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. Okay.
Like
that's
all
a great,
of us, right?
Great answer.
Trying.
So let's go to your. I've been checking. You know, you have an amazing musical journey, man.
Yeah, that's true.
I want to start out asking you, man, what is that, I mean, that experience been like, man? You've been on big stages, small stages, playing with artists of every level, and what has that been like coming, you know, and we're going to talk about how you got, you know, where you come from and that sort of thing. But what has this journey been like for you?
I mean, it's been a blessing, you know. It's like it's been the very thing that I always used to dream about when I was a kid, in a certain kind of way, you know. Sometimes in this society, you know, ambition is a very big part of sort of the American mindset, you know, and my not being from here kind of has. Sometimes I feel like people around me want me to be more ambitious than I am, you know. Wow. Namely, my wife.
Yeah. I get you.
No, but there's other people. It's sort of in the culture, you know. And I don't necessarily like shine on that value. It's not as though I'm like, oh, I'm at odds with that. Yeah. But sometimes I struggle with that idea because, like, what I've been able to do, you know, I'm a kid that, you know, with vinyl, you remember we used to flip the record and look in the back of records,
no doubt.
Look at the credits, and you know, I've gotten a chance to, like, my dream was never to be this solo artist and, you know, have all this recognition and all this kind of. My dream really when I was a kid, it was more simple, you know, as a teenager especially. It was more like to be one more cat, one more guy that had the respect of his peers, that got a chance to play on different records and you know, and rub elbows with some of the guys that I idolized back then, you know. And so I've been able to touch a little bit on that, you know, to had a chance to play with some of my heroes and icons of the music to some degree. I mean, definitely a few of them for sure. Yeah. So, you know, from that standpoint, I feel like if everything stopped today, which kind of has,
no doubt.
You know, I'd be cool, you know, or at least I did something. You know, I achieved a little something, you know. Okay. And so the journey's it's been great, and it's always been guided by my thirst for. I did used to believe heavily in this principle of like the brotherhood of music, you know, like the cats that you meet along the way.
Yeah.
And being young, I had a very idealistic idea about what that meant.
Yeah.
You know.
Gotcha. I know. Yeah.
And I used to look in the back of records, and I used to see the names, and I used to think that, you know, wow, man, you know, like, I don't know, like Steve Gadd and Nathan East and, you know, Paulino da Costa and Ernie Watts and all these cats must be like great friends and you know, they must like hang. Oh man, what a beautiful thing. Oh, and now they're on this record and George Duke is on the album. Oh man. And I've realized that it's not
quite
like that. And that's been hard, you know. That's the bittersweet part of the journey too.
Now, does that come from the culture that you grew up in?
I think yes, for sure. Some of it, I mean, like any human being, I think all of us are a product of our culture, i.e. our environment. And, you know, there's also like your family environment that plays a big role. But I think equally, if not even greater, there is like your own operating system that you come out with out of the box, which is also a part of the equation that sometimes is a variable that people don't place enough importance in. You know, a lot of kind of mainstream pop psychology or sociology states that, you know, you're a product of your environment, you're a product of your culture. And you are, but there's got to be
have your own thumbprint.
Your own thing is strong, you know, and I do believe that. So I think in part it is the culture. We value friendship like tremendously where I'm from, you know. Like I don't know that there's any culture that values friendship more than we do. I really haven't seen it. And I'm not the first person to say that, you know. I've heard other people that have some knowledge of our culture say the same thing. And I'm also like also kind of idealistic person. And many might be shocked to hear that, but it's true, you know, because sometimes people know me a little bit as a maybe curmudgeon or like, you know, I'm criticize a lot of things and stuff like that. And while that's true, I think part of it is because of at the root, I'm truly idealistic and that idealism, and I get frustrated because I'm also really sensitive. So like I get very frustrated, you know, and so that creates a layer of kind of
and you're passionate
anger and that too, you know. So sometimes what looks a certain thing might be something completely different. And also to put a scientific spin on the whole thing, you know, our amygdala is designed to recognize. It's 3 times more sensitive to negative emotion.
You said amygdala?
The amygdala in your brain.
Okay.
There's I think it's got 4 basic centers in which it sort of evaluates data, you know, input from the world, and there's only one geared toward positive emotion and positivity in general.
Wow.
And there's 3 that are specifically designed to recognize negativity and negative emotion. It's a matter of survival. You know? So you have to be aware of the risks and the negativity and the dangers in order to stay alive. It's just the way that we're evolutionarily wired. So many times, you're so negative, you know. There's a heavy spin on positivity in this culture that sometimes, in the world in general, you know, ever since the New Age and all.
You know, it's funny. I've had to be I'm the eternal optimist. You know,
you are,
and it's because
that's good, man.
Yeah, I
it's
am
a blessing.
Yeah, and I've always been this way. You know, because I was always not afraid to be different, and I was always different. You know, it was painful during a period of my life because I didn't fit in. Certain, you know, and everybody's trying to. At some point, we try to fit in. And so once I began to embrace my uniqueness, that thumbprint. You know, I said the stuff that is fun, and I used to get mad at God because I thought God was against me. I mean, there was a point.
Yeah.
And so, but then when I reflect on it, you know, man, and some of the groups that I wanted to be a part of, and some of the people I wanted to be associated with, would have been the worst thing for me. So God was looking out for me.
Looking out for
you.
Yeah.
And so,
children.
But I'm an optimist, meaning that because I believe in a higher power, and I don't have, I don't know, I can't tell you how I got to this.
Right. No,
And so and I'm here. So all I can do is try to be positive, and not that I'm all positive, but I've pretty much been a happy kind of cat.
that's good, man.
Yeah,
I mean, being
and
optimistic
positive,
is wonderful. I think it's great.
But thanks for explaining that, because then we can get to understand people.
I just learned that like a couple of years ago.
Yeah, but that's good to know. So where are you originally from?
I was originally conceived, and I want to shut this off, make sure that it doesn't make noise. I grew up actually was born in Montevideo in Uruguay.
Okay.
Just a very small country, right nestled south of Brazil and to the east of Argentina.
Okay.
And east of us is the Atlantic Ocean. So those are the two countries that we're just nestled under. But I was raised and I grew up in Buenos Aires in Argentina, which is about an hour flight from, it's about the distance between DC and New York, kind of like, Montevideo and Buenos Aires. So.
Okay. So what was it like? What was your experiences like growing up in Argentina?
Oh, man. It was amazing, man. It was like, my life at home was like the best times and the worst of times, But for the most part, I lived a very almost magical childhood. I had a great father, that was kind of, my father was kind of really well known at home. He was a self-made man. He was a soccer player early on in his life, and a little bit of a Renaissance man. He played a little bit of piano, and he kind of, when he was 17, he was kicked out of his house. So I just want to contextualize a little bit of who my father was. Yeah. He was kicked out of his house when he was 17. He got into some trouble with his own father, and so they didn't mend the relationship until his father was on his deathbed.
Wow.
So that was kind of heavy.
Yeah.
And then my father kind of came up like a little bit in the street in terms of he had to fend for himself, but in my culture, French, like I was saying before, friendship is really important, and he just knew a lot of people, and but he got hurt, at some point early in his I think it was early 20s, so he couldn't play anymore, and then he became like a color commentary person on live radio when they would stream, when they would broadcast the games, and then through his connections on the street, and he was also very good businessman, which I'm not. He didn't pass that down. And he was a great. So in that way, he kind of started making different connections. Then he was he wrote great. He was a great writer. So he was like a journalist. He did sports journalism, and then little by little, with his business acumen, he partnered up with this guy who was he took the licensing for Adidas in Argentina.
Wow, okay.
So my father was kind of like, he held up a role that was almost like the vice president of Adidas in Argentina.
Wow. So were you the only child?
No.
You got siblings?
I had a brother. I still have him. He passed. I'm the only one left of my nuclear family.
Okay. Wow.
Everybody passed away. My father passed when I was 14. That's why I said it was the best and the worst, My mother passed in 97. Okay. And my brother passed in 09. He was a young man. He was 46. He was 3 years older than me. I was the youngest.
Okay.
So I'm one of two. But life at home was like I said, I mean, I've always been deep into sports. And my father, so, and in my culture, especially at that time in the 70s, if you didn't grow up, if you didn't play ball, something was wrong with you. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Something was wrong with you.
Yeah.
And so I was deeply embedded in the game and all of that, and in different sports too. I did a lot of different disciplines. I was lucky. Yeah. In my life, I almost feel like I've been blessed in a certain kind of way where I feel a little bit like jack of all trades and a master of none, you know, because
Well, you the master of music.
no, I hardly think so. You know,
Wow.
I've almost everything I've tried I can do, and I have a facility to. You know, so I used to play soccer really well. I used to be a really good swimmer. You know, I had like swam competitively and had like records in high school and this and that.
Wow.
I used to do high jump, believe it or not, with yeah, you know. So I was like super jock. You
Wow,
know, and
yeah.
I used to be heavily into sports. But after my father died, man, things really changed rapidly. And the other thing that was a little weird is that my parents didn't get along. You know, my parents weren't,
Okay.
I knew they were not like my friends' parents.
Gotcha.
As long as I can remember, they slept in separate bedrooms.
Wow. Okay.
I only saw my father kiss my mother once. He came back from Europe, and he gave her a peck. They gave each other a peck on the lips, and I almost fainted,
Wow.
literally. And I was either 7
Wow.
or 8.
Yeah.
And just the tension and the discord in the house was at such a level all the time that, you know, I found that shocking, you know. And,
Wow. That's heavy.
yeah. And then it was, you know, so that was a part of my life that was not great. All vacations were my father and my brother and I. My mother never came with us.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It
Yeah,
was that
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
vibe.
yeah, gotcha.
Only one vacation I remember that she came to. But other than that, you know, they had a tumultuous relationship. I found out after my father passed that he had like a whole nother situation
Oh, gotcha.
for
Gotcha.
a decade
Yeah.
that my mother knew about.
Okay.
He didn't have kids with this other woman,
Yeah,
but
but
he had this situation,
yeah.
for 10 years. And I found out about it like a couple months after he passed as a 15-year-old because
Wow,
I overheard
yeah.
my mother telling that to someone. So that was kind of weird, you know.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
But all in all, it was cool, you know. I mean,
So, was there music in the family?
Yeah, I knew you were going to ask
Yeah.
that question. I should have gotten there. I've done these enough to be able to.
Yeah, we try. I want to see how you got
just
into
talk.
Yeah, no, it's good. I love it.
I do like talking. The music came into my life in Montevideo, in Uruguay. I'm thankful for that because the spark of recognition happened there. I was 2 years old.
You
And
were
there's-
2?
Yeah. The first time I remember being who I am.
Yeah.
Like, because people say, oh, when did you start playing music? Or when? And I always think, like, I've never felt different. I feel like I've always been
Yeah.
this person. I've always been a musician,
Yeah,
you know?
gotcha,
I didn't
gotcha.
just go ahead and, I always been a musician. But there was a spark where you have to recognize, like, your path and what tribe you belong to.
So you knew music was your path at an early age?
Yeah, I mean, I see it now retrospectively. I can recognize that that's what happened
yeah.
because nothing else had moved me to that extent. Like I was 2 years, there's a music in my country called candombe music. Not to be confused with candomble with an L, which is a religion and a dance from Brazil.
Gotcha.
It's more like a religion, like sort of more like, I don't want to say voodoo, but kind of like those old religions that came from Africa, you know? And so candombe is also a dance, but it's like rhythms. And, you know, we had in Uruguay a lot of the slaves that escaped Brazil. And there was also some slavery in Uruguay as well. There was slavery in Uruguay, but Uruguay is a little bit like the Switzerland of South America, you know? They kind of came off of that vibe early on, and so the slaves that were there remained, but then a heavy influx of slaves from Brazil escaped down to Uruguay. So there is like a Afro-Uruguayan culture,
Wow.
even though it's a lot sort of less segregated than things are here.
Yeah.
And so La Murga, those guys on Sundays or during the weekends, they would just, the different neighborhoods, they have their own kind of calls.
Wow.
And so they would travel different neighborhoods. You know, it might be a group of 7 or 8 cats, you know, playing. And there's 3 different drums that hold the essence of the rhythm, you know. And so those cats would come around and play. And I was 2 years old the first time I saw that live.
Wow.
That was my first live musical experience. And when I saw it, you know, my father told me the story that he put me on his shoulders, and we followed the drummers, for a couple of blocks, and then he kind of wanted to head back home. And he said that I grabbed his hairs and I was pulling his hairs and I was screaming like, no.
Wow.
And we had to keep going, and he told me we walked about 25 blocks with the cats because I was not having it,
Wow.
And I remember that moment, I really remember these cats coming around. I remember the painting and the faces and the drums and all that.
Well, it's deep because one thing I know, I saw something with you playing what's that thing called? Udu? Okay. And you have and then when I listen to you play, man, your sense of rhythm and timing, and I know, I see your leg moving, but it's like you got this intrinsic thing.
Yeah.
And I always wonder.
I can totally connect it to that. I mean, I think that environment was definitely a part of it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because that seed was planted early on, and unadulterated too. Because the slaves in America have the dubious, unfortunate distinction of having had their drums taken away. For the most part, there was a small pocket like in Congo Square where cats were allowed to kind of do their thing a little bit, which is why in the United States there's not necessarily a prevalent or very fertile, if you will, school of hand drumming. You dig what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like if you really think about it,
Wow.
there isn't necessarily a tradition. Now we can get into go-go music and that's a whole nother, because that is its own thing.
Yeah.
But I think it's a freak of nature, and it's one of the most wondrous things on earth, right? The way it came about and all that. But there aren't a lot of where you say, well, this is clearly.
Wow.
Now, there are cats that are heavily studious about West African drumming and djembe playing and stuff like that. And and there is that, but it's it's like cats that are looking
they got to go
back home. You dig what I'm saying? But like in Cuba and other places,
it's part of the culture.
It's part of the because the drums weren't taken away in the same way.
So your first connection to music was more from a rhythmic.
Totally.
Wow.
Totally.
It was funny, man, because I start playing the saxophone, and I hear melody. I don't hear lyrics or nothing. I hear melody. I got to force myself to hear lyrics. And, I might hear harmony too, but I got to force myself to focus on them drums. I got a little funk thing I can get in there, but it's a certain level of rhythm, man, where it's like I'm trying to count 1, 2, 3, 4.
Nah, man. You talking mess.
No, man, I'm serious.
Being nice. He's being nice for the camera.
No, man. No, I'm serious, man. But it's I talked to Benito Gonzalez. He got that thing, man. And it's a real sense of time, like a strong sense of time. No matter what's going on. And then I seen you playing 2 pianos, man. You doing something here and doing something here, and it's like right there, man. And it's like a third sense, a sixth sense, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it's I think it's like kind of the most important element of music, right? To me, I mean,
Yeah, see, I got to relearn my. See, to me, melody was. I was hearing birds.
I mean, obviously we talk about, it's like melody, harmony, and rhythm.
Yeah.
But it's always like kind of relegated to the last thing in this culture. A little bit. Melody, harmony, rhythm. And of course you do need it, and you don't need all three at the same time for it to be music, as we know. Because
no doubt.
when you play rubato, you're not necessarily playing in a grid of time. I mean, there's an how could I put it? Maybe an elastic kind of allusion to time. You still have to play events next to each other, and they're happening in a certain kind of time, but there's that kind of playing. Or you could play harmony and rhythm without having a melody, etc. But roughly speaking, to be able to wrap our minds around a definition of music, we say it's sounds organized in melody, rhythm. I mean harmony and rhythm. But to me, if you don't have time, it's like everything else more acquirable, perhaps. I'm not sure if that's the correct word, but attainable. Yeah. I think you can work hard at.
I mean, I can dance.
You could work hard. Yeah, but so you got you could work hard at getting a firmer grip on harmony and learning harmony. You can work hard at learning or having a richer melodic
Yeah.
array of ideas you've written books, and so I think all that is more attainable. But if you don't have time, it's very difficult.
But there are levels
To
of
get
everything.
it, you dig what I'm
There are
saying?
levels of everything.
Of course.
And so, like when I was in Nigeria, man, and they were playing, and I couldn't tell what one was, but they were like,
And they couldn't tell you either.
Yeah, but they were
Because
like,
they don't even count the same way we
yeah,
do,
man,
right?
they were so insane.
They know where the downbeat is.
Yeah, but there's some forms of Latin music that you got to think other than 1, 2, 3. I mean, it's just you got to feel it. It's I mean, it's yeah.
Because the up is just as important. Like a lot. That's the thing with a lot of the music for us, and I feel like in America, it's like the one is super important, and that downbeat is super strong. Like that's why the funk is like
Yeah, yeah.
on the one.
Yeah.
Boom, cats hit that one hard. But for us, like a lot of times the one just goes by.
Yeah, man.
Nobody's playing the one. That's what I mean. Sometimes, it's
Yeah.
just like it's up in the air.
I remember playing with Michael Bowie. He had this Quinn Sinan.
Yeah.
He had this song in 7, man, and I'm trying to it could. I mean, my mind just don't wrap around it like
Really?
Yeah,
Nah, man.
Yeah, I'm telling you, man.
7 feels like 4 to me.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. And it's just as natural, like drinking, like
Way more natural than like 5 and stuff
Really?
for me. Yeah. And even 3. Like 7 is way more natural than
and it's nothing you sat down and worked out and said.
No. I don't think so.
Yeah,
I
it might
mean,
also be it might also be just listening to different musics and having
Could be.
yeah. So
But that's the thing, is like, because this stuff wasn't in 7, the candombe music is
Yeah.
not in 7. It's in 4, it's in, there's 6 and 4 there ever present. I mean, in Africa, 6 is king, right?
yeah, but
So,
your time and I know people that got it's like nothing's throwing them off. The drummer can be doing all these. And
I
you
mean,
just-
don't get me wrong, I get thrown off too, man.
Yeah.
I lose the time sometimes, and I
Yeah.
got to look around. And I was listening to something yesterday, man. I did this gig with, dang, I don't want to put my brother out on blast. Maybe you can admit, don't put this on there.
Huh?
But don't put this on there. Maybe cut it out.
Okay.
But I was listening to this thing. I don't know if you want to use it. I'm sure he won't care. He's still a master. The point is, cats
You
do
gotta say it,
sometimes
man.
get lost,
Yeah.
right? You know what I'm saying? Like, it happens.
Okay.
Oh, I was doing this gig with Nick Payton. Rob recommended. Glasper was doing the gig for a minute, and he couldn't make this one date in San Diego, and he called me to sub for him, right? So Nick called me to sub for Rob, and I did. I mean, I don't know how I did. He never called me again, so I don't know. I always tell Nick, I was like, man, you never called me again. Like, man, you sounded good. I was like, okay. But I did it, and Tane did it. And I played with Tane a bunch of times, but I was listening to this thing. We were playing like Days of Wine and Roses, and he got just so turned around on my solo, like
Was it what you would play? The kind
I don't know. I don't know what it was.
Yeah.
It could have been, but at the same time, in fairness to him, we were in a big stage. Those theaters where sometimes you don't hear that
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
When
yeah.
you're in a big auditorium and
That's-
it's like unnatural, and you
yeah.
just the drums were way over there, and,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
maybe
I've
he
been
couldn't
in
hear me well
yeah.
enough, and Vicente Archer was
Okay.
playing. And so he got off by one beat, like so. So basically, his 4, what was really 4 was his 1.
Okay, gotcha.
And
Gotcha.
we got off at one point, and I listened to it, and I always thought it was me because I'm like, I
Yeah,
was the
yeah.
less sort of jazz cat on the stage, so I figured like it was me.
Okay.
And then I realized that it was him. He got turned around, so I'm like, man, cats, it happens.
Yeah, yeah.
There was a big brouhaha that went down about like, I can't remember, but you probably remember this on Facebook about like Branford talking about one of Miles's records and how they had gotten off, like the rhythm section had gotten off, and cats were like, "Oh, that was sacrilege. He said that. What a jerk."
yeah, yeah.
Something like that
Yeah.
happened. I can't remember exactly. But
We
these
all
things
human.
happen,
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
that's the point. Like
Yeah.
these things are gonna happen. I'm not impervious to making mistakes on the time. It's just that for me, it's again 2 things. It's like the environment is one thing, but I also came out the box with a predilection for time or for rhythm. You know what I'm saying? So like,
So was the
I
drums?
started on drums.
Okay, that's what I was gonna ask
when
you.
I was a kid.
Drums was your first instrument.
Yeah, when I was a kid, they got me all kinds of percussion toys. So I started playing it around maybe 3.
And you would play with the records and all that.
Yeah, I got my first drum set when I was about 4.5. When we moved to Argentina, it was deep because like we moved to Argentina, I was about 4.5, and there was a band that rehearsed right next door to my crib, you know, and it was like, to me, they were like grown men, but they were probably 17, 18, you know, and they played like rock and roll or whatever. And I remember that we were playing with the kids in the block, and there was a bunch of kids on the block. We were all tight, and I was like the youngest. And I used to like Batman back then, so I used to listen to Batman. And I internalized that rhythm, you know, and I knew intrinsically, even though I had never played it per se, like on a drum kit, because I didn't have a drum kit yet.
Wow.
But I had other, and I was like, they were playing, you know, and they were playing, and I said to the kids on the bar, I said, I can play that, you know. I can play drums. And they were like, no, you can't play. I said, yeah, I can play. Because I was a little thing, you know, 4.5 or whatever. I was like, yeah, I can play that. You know? And they were like, no, you can't. And it was like, yes, you can. No, you can't. So let's go. And so they went and rang the doorbell. And we went up to where they were rehearsing. I remember I was super little and like these big ass amps and the rolling chord. And they took a little break and, you know, they let me play. You know, they got behind the drums and everybody was sitting there like all the eyeballs on me.
Wow.
And I like froze. I didn't play, you know. I didn't play nothing. I was like, no. I was like, it's my first time on a kid. I was like, I touched this. I had little toy kids before, but nothing like this. So I was like touching it. And then I couldn't reach the foot pedal. So I was sitting on the joint. And then they kind of lost interest and they left. The kids went away from the room. And maybe there was one guy left hanging out. And then I
started playing.
You know.
Wow.
I started playing the beat immediately,
Wow.
you know? And then they all came in the room like, "Wah!"
Wow, that's crazy.
And, you know, the floor tom was my bass drum for a while because I couldn't reach the floor, you know? So I got used to playing like that. So my feet are horrible, you know?
So how'd you get acclimated to the piano?
My grandmother was a great pianist, too. You know, my grandmother was she was a very artistic person, like a what today would be considered like a bohemian kind of person. She was an actress.
Okay.
And she used to kick it with some really, really heavy people. She was Argentine, but she lived in Spain. My mother was born in Spain. And around the time of Franco and that whole civil unrest that happened there, my mother left. The whole family, her and my grandmother and the two daughters left Spain and came to Argentina. So my mother came down there when she was about 4.
Okay.
And my grandmother she was friends with people like Salvador Dali and, you know, she knew people like that, like Picasso and people that ran in those circles.
Wow.
You know, she was a dope actress and she also was a great musician. And she played like piano and organ for like the silent movies.
Wow.
You know, back in the day, they had the silent movies,
Yeah.
and they had people playing their butt off on the side, you know, and she used to do that, you know, so.
And that's why I asked,
And so you got to think, just to share a little something, like my father was born in 1921.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah, so-
I have older parents.
Gotcha.
My mother was born in 31.
Okay.
You dig? So like,
So grandma.
I'm 1 year older than my wife, but her mother, you know, God rest her soul, she was 41. She was born in 41. So that's 10 years later than my mom.
Yeah.
And her father was around, you know,
Yeah.
her father might be born, like, he might be a little older, like maybe mid-38 or something, like 1930. But my mother was born in 31. My father in 1920, my bad, 20.
So your grandma.
I never met,
Okay.
I met both my grandmothers, but never a grandfather.
Okay.
So my grandmother was born in the late 1800s.
Wow. That's heavy, man.
You dig? And so she was a great piano player. So what happened was, one of my trips from Uruguay, we went to Buenos Aires to kind of meet her, or we just kind of made a trip home. To Argentina with my mother to see her mother. So I went, and then that's my first time that I remember being conscious of meeting her. And I walked into her apartment, and of course there was a bunch of furniture, you know, like. And then all of a sudden, she sat at this one piece of furniture, and it was magical.
Wow, the piano?
You dig what I'm saying?
Wow.
And she started playing, and I lost my mind. And so I started running in a circle. You know, I remember that. I was running in a circle. Like I didn't understand. Because all of a sudden, this piece of furniture came alive, and she was looking at me, and I was just running like crazy. I couldn't believe what was happening, you know?
Wow.
So that was another there was the spark at first with the drums, and then this moment was kind of equally impactful for me.
Wow.
And then I remember probably about a year later, so we were now living in Argentina, and my mother shared with me that Boo Boo, we called her, my grandma was sick and was gonna die soon. And I was 5 or so. And one time she came to visit, and as she was leaving, she was sitting in her cab, and I ran outside, and I knocked on the window. She rolled it down, and I said, Boo Boo, when you die, can you leave me your piano?
You said that?
Yeah,
Wow.
straightforward. Just like
You
that.
said.
You know,
I don't mean to laugh.
5. You know what I mean?
I don't
You know,
mean to laugh,
like
man.
Bill
Yeah,
Cosby used to have the
yeah,
kids say,
yeah.
kids say the darndest
I'm sorry,
things.
man. I don't
No,
mean-
it's all good.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love the story
Yeah,
because
man,
it's
that-
true.
yeah.
You know, like
Wow,
I was like
that's-
totally innocent and earnest.
Yeah.
Like, yo, when you die, can you leave me your piano?
Wow.
And she was like, I remember her smile to this day, man. She looked at me and smiled, and she touched my face. She's like, "Of course, baby, like this, you know." And she passed. She gave me her little mini piano. You know?
Wow.
And that was the beginning of it. And my father was a nut, man. My father he loved jazz, and his 2 guys were Monk and Bill Evans.
Wow.
2 completely
Yeah.
diametrically.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I guess you could say diametrically opposed players in terms of their approach and what they sounded like and all that.
Yeah.
They were very, you know. But he died with both those cats. Like, he loved them to pieces.
Really?
So I used to hang with him. He used to go visit a friend of his who was a psychiatrist, and they used to lock themselves up in a room
And listen to Monk.
and listen to Monk and Bill and
Evans.
other cats, you know. And I'd be sitting there, and I thought I could play, again, like with the drums. I thought that I could intrinsically play.
I mean, were you teaching yourself at that time?
No. I sat on the piano one day because after, you know, being all this music, I said, man, give me a break. I want to play something. I know. I was listening to a little Beatles record, and I had this song in my head. And I went to the piano, and I sat down, and I could swear that I could play it, and
Wow.
it wasn't happening. I couldn't play it.
Oh, you couldn't play it?
No.
Okay.
Because I had never
So that was
laid
a
my
different
hand.
experience you got than
Completely.
When you
know?
went to the drums.
Yeah, I was like,
yeah.
what? Hold on, what? You know? So at first I used to just kind of, when I first got the piano, I used to just experiment with sounds. You know, I would put my foot on the sustain and play really low and loud and or soft and high and experiment with sounds. And I started to pick out a little bit of chords and this and that. And I started like taking lessons.
Okay.
But you know, my teacher was in my country. I'll tell you, you'll dig this. We didn't get color TV until 1976. In 1978, we hosted the World Cup, the Soccer World Cup. So we needed to have color TV.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Wow.
And because we were broadcasting to the world, and the world had color TV,
Yeah.
but we were about a
yeah,
decade
yeah,
behind
yeah.
the times.
Yeah.
So in 1976, I saw color TV for the first time.
Wow.
When I started taking lessons, though, I was it was 72, 73, 72, and I was about 6. And I used to go around the corner because, you know, the kid wants to play piano. Nobody thought anything of it. They just sent me to the piano teacher around the corner.
Gotcha.
The lady used to sit there and knit and watch TV. And so color TV didn't exist yet. So she had like colored cellophane strips that she plastered onto the screen.
Wow.
She had a red strip, a green strip, a yellow strip, a blue strip.
To get color?
I guess.
Wow.
Because it was covering the
Yeah.
whole
Wow.
face of the TV. It was a big TV.
Uh-huh.
And she had color TV.
Wow.
With cellophane strips on it. And she would sit there and watch her soap operas and knit. And I would just play, you know? And after about 2.5 years of me still trudging through these lessons, my mother was like, he's still interested. You know, most kids will pick it up for
Yeah.
and she was like, he's still interested. So she remembered a guy that she kind of came up in a circle of friends. She was friends with this dude who went on. He was already a great pianist at the time, but he went on to become like a very well-renowned classical player. So she tapped him to see if
Was
he'd
that
be down.
Antonio?
Yeah, Antonio de Raco. That's his
Yeah.
name.
Okay.
And
Wow.
so she asked him, you know, and he was straight up with her. You know, he hadn't seen her in years and years, and he was like, "Look, if like this is I'm for real about this. This is what I do. I only take on students that want to be on this thing." So,
So you start learning classical?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And they have to be. His whole thing was like, if you're not, I'm not going to waste my time. You know,
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
training top
Yeah,
level,
yeah.
world
And
class.
how old are you at this
classical
time?
players? At the time, I was 8.5 or 9.
Okay.
9, I think 9.
Okay.
Somewhere around there. Yeah.
So he
maybe
basically
8.5.
started you from the.
I mean, I was already playing.
Okay.
Because I'd
Yeah.
been playing a few
Yeah.
years
Yeah.
and stuff, and I had a little boogie woogie thing that I used to
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
play
yeah.
with my left hand. And I used
So
to
what
play.
impact did he have on your playing?
Huge, man. Because the thing with him was like, he told my mother, he's like, look, I'll check him out. If I see something, I'm happy to take him on. But if I don't,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, and you
Yeah.
gotta understand. And she was like, cool, whatever. So I went and sat down and played my little things that I did. I wrote a couple little things by then also, and started writing a little bit of something. And so he liked my playing. He saw something. I remember he said that he told her that what he thought was good. He thought I had musicality and a vibe, like I could make music. And then he was like, I like that he doesn't have a lot of vices, technique-wise.
Yeah, yeah.
So he thought my technique was sound enough, and this is what he did with me. Like my first month playing with him, the piano would be here, and he would just go. I just would go like this, like, and it didn't matter what it sounded like. He would just like, just with your arm, be really loose, and just with the phalanx, just hold on, just and that's what I did, like on my lesson. The whole lesson was like,
That might be some
"Plonk."
Karate Kid.
Exactly.
With the whip, yeah.
I did that for about a month. Every lesson, I'd sit there.
So you had to have a lot of trust that he knew that.
I mean, I was a kid, so
Yeah,
I'm just trying to go along with the program.
Yeah.
So he would just kind of like hold my hands up like this and make sure, no, you're not loose. Your arm is not. There's tension in your shoulder. He would do these kinds of things.
That's heavy.
So then we started, we kind of started doing the thing. And I never did the scales thing, the hand-on exercises and all that. He didn't believe in that stuff. So basically, he would develop your technique via the pieces that he chose for me. You know what I mean?
That's heavy.
So like, to develop the left hand, he gave me a couple of Chopin studies that are only for the left hand.
Gotcha.
And, I played some of that stuff, a few of those. And that was really helpful. I mean, he really kind of like coaxed something that was already in me out. He just raised the bar. You know what I'm saying? He just...
Yeah, he brought out of you what was already in you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He helped
But
me.
I wanted to ask you, do you think that the reason why I ask people, do they come from a musical family? Because I believe some people inherit some stuff. Mm-hmm. Was there anybody in your family that you mentioned your grandmother, that you genetically?
I mean, probably. I
Yeah.
mean, she was dope.
Because you seem like a very organic, like you say. People that studied like all that, but playing music is another kind of thing, and your sense of musicality. Creating music requires a different. You can play all them exercises and get your technique.
I'm a natural player.
Yeah. So,
I'm not very learned. I'm more natural.
but it's beautiful, man. It's like so. And he taught you based on learning songs. You got technique by learning the
Different
music.
etudes, different things,
Yeah. So did music come easy for you?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah. I was just extremely lazy. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was. I mean, I never really practiced a lot and all these kinds of things. I should have, but I didn't. I never was that guy,
Do you have perfect pitch?
No.
No.
I was just talking about this yesterday with somebody, I don't. I have pretty good relative,
So how do you develop your ear? Because,
I think just doing it just kind of puts you there, right? You know what I'm saying? Like,
you didn't do anything special.
No, I didn't. I know guys that develop perfect pitch, like one in particular, James Lloyd from Pieces of a Dream.
Yeah.
Who's an amazing piano player. I love this cat, And I used to be in that band when I first came to live to the States. I didn't know anything, and I used to watch Jim Vance on Channel 4. I dug Jim Vance for some reason.
Yeah.
Because you could not dig this dude. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He's from your end of the woods, right?
Yeah.
And he's from Philly.
He might be.
I think he's from Philly.
I know Pieces of Dreams are.
Yeah,
they're from
but
Philly,
I'm
'cause I
pretty
remember them
sure
coming up. Yeah.
Jim Vance is a Philly dude.
You okay? Yeah.
And so, and Jimmy, and so he put them on one day. They were playing at the Monument, I think, with Grover or whatever, and he put them. He talked about them, you know. And remember, you know, he always had like command, and so he was like, man, there was. Remember back in the day, we used to have those like black family reunion joints at the Monument in the summertime.
Yep.
So it was one of maybe I don't know if it was that, but it was like a concert at the Monument. And so he's like, man, there's these 3 dynamite guys from Philadelphia, blah, 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 and put them on. And I heard them, I was like, oh, snap, man.
Wow.
And they were kids.
Yeah,
You know, I mean, they were a little bit older than me, but it was, and the cat was amazing. I was like, so then as luck would have it, I started playing with them probably when I was about 22. But James told me, you know, he trained himself. He said when he was a kid, if he was outside playing and his mother called him in or whatever, he came in for a glass of water or whatever, he'd go up to the piano and play middle C. And whenever he thought about it, he would just run by the piano and play middle C every day.
Wow.
You know, at different times, randomly. And so he developed perfect pitch.
Wow.
You know.
By doing that?
Yeah. And it's pretty powerful because, like, I remember, you know, he would hear stuff like up top, you know what I mean? He would say, oh, maybe take that E flat off that chord. Like, he could hear all that stuff, you know. And we've known cats that have freakish perfect pitch. But it's weird because I think it's a separate gift from the gift of music, you know. Because, like, Herbie doesn't have perfect pitch.
Oh, wow. He doesn't?
No.
Wow.
There's countless great musicians that don't have perfect pitch, you know?
Yeah.
I don't think Miles had perfect pitch.
Yeah. I mean.
I don't know that Train or Bird had perfect pitch. You know more.
Yeah. Well, I think Bird had it. Bird, it was.
Do you know for sure?
I don't. I can't say I know for sure, but they said he had photographic memory, which memory is a real one of the quality of perfect pitch.
Is it? I have a kind of photographic memory, but I don't have it.
And you know what? You might. Some people got perfect pitch, and they
don't know it. Nah,
and they, you know, no, I don't got. I'm sure, you know.
No. I'm close. Like I can play a chord and be like, oh, this is exactly. Or if I think of a song, I know exactly. But a lot of people are like that. Most people are like that. Even non-musicians. Non-musicians can just.
Yeah, that's true.
Sing. Have you ever met a cat that has perfect pitch, but kind of, I don't want to say sucks, but you know, kind of is not a great musician?
Yeah. I mean, it's not. It ain't gonna. You know, you gotta learn how to use it. You know, but it still fascinates me. I found a second grader that had it. So, and he ain't
You found a second grader that has it?
Yeah, one of my.
How did you find out?
Because he would run in my room, like after, you know, I'm teaching elementary school. His name was Timothy Wiggins, and he would run in the room, and I had xylophones and stuff all around the room. And you know, at the end of the day, I'm tired. I'm like, I don't, you know.
You don't want to hear nothing.
But so one day I just let him come in, and he went on his xylophone and played Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and didn't miss a note. For a second grader, that kind of, I mean, he intuitively kind of knew.
Really?
Yeah.
The physical layout of where
that got my attention. And so I said, Timothy, come here. So I was at the piano, and I said, turn around. I said, man, this is a C. I gave him about 4 notes. And I started playing it. Oh, E. C. I mean, he was just rattling them off like that. Then I gave him all the black keys. And once I locked the sound in with no, he was rattling it off like
that's crazy.
F sharp.
That's crazy.
I mean, you know, but he was mildly autistic too.
Yeah. But that's the thing. It's like,
so he had a different. But it fascinated me, man. I'm like, how you do that? You know,
it's deep. Man.
Yeah.
Cat. Well, Dwayne is crazy.
Oh, Dwayne, yeah.
But like, if there's cats that you play. I remember I met a guy named Leo Huppert from Baltimore, bass player, but he played some keys too, and he was a better bass player than keyboard player. As a keyboard player, he was decent, you know, but he was a pretty good bass player. But his perfect pitch was off the chain, like, you know.
Wow.
I did the same thing, made him turn around, but except I just went like this, you know, like on the piano, you know, like played a cluster.
And he told you all the notes?
And he told me each note, you know, it was like 9 notes or whatever, and he just like, down there you have a this, F sharp, you got a G, okay, up top you got a B, A flat. He was just.
That's nuts for me, man. I mean,
it's deep.
It's
another thing altogether.
Now, the reason why I believe Charlie Parker had it, man, they say Charlie Parker can be sleeping and the band is playing, and he wake up and just blend right in. and start solo. Did and I think there are different levels of, like, especially when we talk about jazz improvisation. I was taught scales and chords and licks and patterns and all that. And some people, and so most of the way I play is cerebral in the sense. I got some soul, a little soul,
Of course.
But some people hear music like they hear the whole picture like all together. They don't separate. They hear the sound and let the sound kind of
dictate what it wants to do.
And that's, you have that. It's like it's like it's sonic. Like when you talk about sonic, like when you hear Bird and strings, when Charlie Parker plays with strings, man, it's not like he's a jazz cat that's playing like, or when he does a blues, it's like he's telling a story, and he had the ability just to blend in with what was going on around him
all the time.
Yeah, and that's another level than just so I can play the changes, and I'm trying to get there, but and that's why I think Bird had he had a thing. Train is a cat that worked hard at like you can have great ears and not have perfect pitch and be a great musician.
Of course.
And some cats, but Bird, the way he plays, man, tells me he had it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and because
You're probably right. I mean.
Yeah, I mean.
I don't have. You seem like that's your guy. So have you read a lot? You've read a bunch of stuff on him, right?
On Bird?
Like books and stuff.
When
like
I was
that.
younger, yes, I was.
And none of those books account whether he had perfect pitch or not.
I might have forgot, but I kind of always assumed he did, because he can hear. He can.
You might have come across the information and just internalized.
Yeah. At the time, perfect pitch probably didn't mean anything to me, because I was in the Bird at the age of 14 or 12. 14.
Really?
Yeah, I was not. I'm talking about.
That's
blown
awesome.
away.
That's
Yeah,
beautiful.
like Charlie Parker was my cat. Like.
Yeah. He opened that door.
Huh?
He opened that door for you.
Yeah, and it was weird because, man, none of my family, emotionally.
That's why I think that sometimes that whole thing of like, oh, if music is in your family, then you're gonna be. Some of that stuff it's overrated, man.
I think I got the jazz from my grandfather's side, on my dad's side, because he was a jazz. He bought he was just a kind of cat that had books. When I cleaned out his house, man, he had all books of history. He loved different cultures. He had all kinds of records, classical, jazz. So I think I got that from that side.
Yeah.
So
Very possible.
the reason why I say that, man, all the cats, man, I've seen cats like Christian McBride. His dad is a great bass player.
Okay.
Joe DeFrancesco. His dad is, or the Papa, Warren Wolf. I think he come from
Oh, really?
Yeah. Chris Fun.
It definitely gives you a leg up if you're in that environment and you're constantly immersed in it. I guess, you could. Obviously, there's a lot of, when you're in your early stages, your father is, a big pillar of it's like your North Star. So if you see something,
they can direct.
And it's possible. I'm sure that genetically some of that stuff gets passed down as well.
You still got to put the work in.
Right. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
My son is a great example. Like my oldest son, when he was young, he was always playing in school. He picked like viola. And he played viola, and then, he kept it up. And, he had definitely like ability for it. You know, he probably reads better than I do.
My oldest son got it, man. He produces. He's self-taught. But he picked. I was trying to get him to take piano lessons because his mom she sings and plays piano, and so he's got a natural gift, man. Like he did some stuff, man, that was like, whoa. I'm like, man. So he got a gift.
Yeah, it's all gifts,
Yeah, so.
But some people, like I said, like my son, he just stopped. He didn't want to play.
Yeah.
And he made it to where he was playing like in the PG County the honors orchestra,
Wow.
the PG County honors orchestra.
Yeah.
It's where they pick the best kids in the whole county.
Yeah, so he didn't have a passion for it.
I mean, no, he didn't. He didn't. But he sounded great. You know what I'm saying? Like he really sounded good. Like he also did a lot of those side by side. You familiar with that?
Side by side.
The side by side orchestras is like
When you sit next to.
pros.
Wow.
So they
That's
paired
cool.
the Annapolis Philharmonic
Uh-huh.
or the Annapolis Symphony Orchestra with like the best kids from the county.
Oh wow. They got that in PG County.
Yeah, man.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's crazy.
Oh man, and they was killing. So you have half the orchestra is like the pros
Professionals.
from the Annapolis
And the kids?
Symphony Orchestra, and half of the kids. So it'd be like he's sitting next to a violist from the Annapolis Symphony Orchestra,
I've
and all the chairs.
Is
are
that still
loud.
going
I
on?
like that. Yeah.
Wow.
And I've seen a couple of concerts, and they were great.
Wow.
They're playing Brandenburg concertos,
Uh-huh.
they're playing all kinds of great stuff.
That's
and it's
crazy.
like, I was so proud, man. It was the first time, well, not the first time, but it was like, I lost my parents before my kids were born. So like,
Yeah.
you always got that thing
Yeah,
like, damn,
yeah,
man, I wish my
yeah,
father had met
yeah,
my
yeah,
kids.
yeah.
I wish my mom had met my wife and
Yeah,
the kids and
yeah.
all that. And so I remember thinking like my mother would have been, because my mother really loved classical music and jazz too, hardcore. But like, so like she would have loved
Yeah.
to have seen her grandson playing this music,
Yeah. Yeah. No
So,
doubt.
but it is what it is.
I read that you started playing professionally at the age of 16,
Probably, I mean, semi-professionally.
but you were
yeah.
gigging. You were gigging in Argentina.
Yeah.
So, so do any of those musicians, you still
Oh yeah.
talk to?
I
Really?
still talk to them.
Really?
I mean, not many of them, but yeah, for sure. There's one guy in particular that I met when I was 17. His name was Jose Morelli, Jota, and we call him Jota, like J.
Yeah.
Jota Morelli. He's a great drummer from Argentina, one of the top drummers in our country. And he lived here for a time. He lived in L.A. for like 10 years.
Okay.
Then he was Al Jarreau's drummer for about 5 of those years.
Wow.
So, but when I was young, probably about 14 or so, 15 maybe, I met this kid. I changed schools and I went to a different school. I met this kid named Alex Fattoruso. And, you ever heard of Francisco Fattoruso? He's a bass player.
No.
But he's pretty well known. He's been making a lot of noise. But anyway, his father and his uncle had a group in Uruguay called OPA. And they were great, man. They were like a sort of like a fusion group. They combined a lot of different styles of music. They were like, for lack of a better term, they were like kind of like on a weather report kind of tip, but not quite. And they played candombe. The music from Uruguay, the candombe vibe was very present in their music.
Wow.
And so I met his oldest son, Hugo Fattoruso, is the piano player. His oldest son, Alex, was living in Argentina.
Wow.
Because him and his father, the father was this musician. He had had a few kids with a couple different women, but the first kid he had was with this German woman who was very, and so she instilled like a serious, like rigorous study ethic. She didn't want her kid to be a musician at all.
Wow.
But I linked up with him, and he was a great little musician. He was 13 at the time, and he played bass.
Wow.
He had met Jocko because he went
Yeah.
to Miami to hang
yeah,
out with his
yeah.
father, and he met Jocko. Jocko
Wow.
showed him a few things,
Yeah.
and he played soprano. He played a little guitar. He played flute. He played a little bit of piano. He had some
Yeah.
chords,
Wow.
And so the cat was really talented, and we had a little band, him and I, a guitar player and a drummer, and so because of his father's association, he knew a studio downtown, and we went to that studio, and we recorded, and the guys in the studio were very impressed because here come these kids and they're like 14, 15 years old. It's like, we're doing the session with these kids, and they expected some noise.
Y'all
But we had something for them.
yeah.
You know what I mean? And I remember the cats. They were all coming into control room like, "Damn, man, these kids sounded killing," you know.
Wow.
And so,
Y'all do fusion kind of stuff?
kind of like more like a kind of sort of a progressive rock, kind of
Okay.
like like the symphonic rock of
yeah.
groups like Yes or Genesis, like back in that day, kind of like that kind of vibe maybe. And so, him and I started going to that studio a lot, and they would give us free studio time.
Wow.
because they knew his father and his uncle, you know, so he was the son of one of the cats,
Gotcha.
basically.
Yeah.
So he and I used to go there, and we would also leave gear, and so they'd use our gear, and they'd also give us free studio time. So a session might be over at 1 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the morning, and we get rolling and go from 2 to 8 or 9 in the morning, you know?
Yeah, that's great.
And I would play drums and keys, and my boy would play like bass and guitar, and he would sing these little songs, and we would write stuff together and do all this stuff.
You still got that music?
Yeah, I got some cassettes of that. I got to find them, but yeah, I got some of that stuff.
Yeah.
So what happened was I used to hang out at the studio a lot, you know, and bona fide cats used to come through there, you know, the best of what we had to offer in Argentina, you know, like the Steve Gads and the Jeff Porcaros and the, you know, Steve Ferrones of our vibe of the recording scene would fall by the studio. It was a small 8-track studio, so it was not a major studio, but it was like a hang spot because it was owned by this bass player who was heavy on the scene. So it would be the place where cats would go to hang.
Yeah.
You know? You know those clubs in New York?
Like,
exactly, like Bradley's. And the cats would be off the gig and they'd go to this one spot. So it was kind of like that. And so what I would do is I would sit there, and because I already loved the studio, which is its own animal, you know. So I would be like, man, I wanted to record no matter what. So I'd be hanging around, and let's say they had a session, and so a producer would, and it'd be jive cats too. The music wasn't great, you know. And a guy would come in for a session. So I would act like kind of nonchalant, and I'd be sitting on the upright just playing. And the cat be walking around the studio, you know, and I knew he'd be listening. And then, you know, he'd approach me and he would tell me, you know, that he had the session and, you know, would I be interested in playing on it? He couldn't offer me any money. You know, he was, you know, straight hustle. But I knew that was what the game was. But I had something to gain too, you know what I mean? Because I was like, I want to learn. I want to get more studio experience. And I loved what the studio represented. So I was like, So I started cutting my teeth doing a lot of session work when I was young, you know? And then I got a chance to play with heavier cats.
That explains a lot of things.
Then I got a chance to play with the heavier cats, you know?
So do you have the same passion now for music that you had when you were a kid? Took you too long. No, I'm joking.
At times.
Okay. Yeah. Because you've done so much.
No, my faith in him, because like you were saying, man, like, yeah, I'm a musician, but at the same time, man, I don't just identify with just being a musician.
Gotcha. Yeah, some other stuff.
I used to, you know, I read this, who said this? A long time ago, I read either Herbie or Zawano, one of the two said something about that. You know, it's like, you can't, you know, it might have been Herbie. It was like, you can't identify with being a musician. You can't be like the guitar player. I also heard, I think on an interview, Mike Stern said something like this too. He was like, I can't just be the guitar player, you know, like, you have to be a human being, you know what I mean? Because music doesn't exist in a vacuum, and you gotta put something in it anyway, you know? Gene, my brother, Gene Lake always says that music is a social endeavor, and it really is, you know, in a certain kind of way.
Wow.
Sometimes as a piano player, you know, us piano players, man, we were funny cats, you know, like we sometimes don't think we don't need nobody, you know what I mean? Because of the nature of the instrument. And
because you're always working.
Well, we just think we don't need nobody. Like, I don't, you know.
Oh, yeah. You mean in terms of I can cover all the parts?
I can just play by myself.
Solo. Yeah, no doubt.
And sink into harmony and do everything I want to do all by myself. I don't need you.
Now, I've seen you on gigs.
I'm being like completely like pragmatic. Like, I don't really need you.
Yeah, I've seen you on gigs where you the bass player.
But you need somebody. If you want to hear some chords, you need somebody.
No doubt.
Right?
No doubt.
And you have a knowledge of chords. You can play your own chords behind yourself, but you got to go to another instrument to do it.
No doubt.
And I think that develops a sense for piano players. You notice how drummers are like super social? You've been to NAMM before, right?
Yeah.
You ever see what happens at NAMM? Man, it's a tribe of these crazy. I mean, I remember, you know, like from Little John to Aaron Spears to Teddy Campbell to Lil Chris, you know. It's funny that Chris Davis now like this world-renowned figure, but to us it's just Lil Chris, right?
Yeah, Chris, yeah.
So you got all these cats, and they love hanging with each other, man.
Yeah.
They love hanging with each other.
Yeah.
Piano players are not like that.
Yeah.
We're not like that.
Wow.
But I love that stuff. And plus, there's a lot of jealousy and competition with piano players. Like,
Really?
Yeah, I think so. Wow. You know, I've never been that kind of dude.
Yeah.
I mean, I recognize a little bit of that
Yeah.
seed, that sin in me
Yeah.
a little bit.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I've always, more than that, though,
Yeah.
I've always been a guy who wants to embrace
Yeah.
other cats.
No doubt.
It's hard to find some cats that you can play with, though, as a piano player.
Really?
Well, yeah. I mean, you know, it's not easy to play with another piano player.
Okay. Gotcha,
You
gotcha.
get people that just don't know how to accompany you, or you know, it's hard to. I mean, you got so many things at your disposal.
Yeah.
It's difficult to play with somebody else. I mean, I've
Wow.
only done it when I was in Pieces of a Dream. I played with James, you know,
And
that
that's
was-
difficult?
And that was great. No, well, that was easy. 'Cause
Yeah,
he's
yeah,
great,
yeah, yeah.
You know, but if you get a cat, I've had the experience of playing with other keyboard players a few times. I played with him for a while, you know, on Pieces. I played with Herbie like a couple of times, you
Yeah.
know, and that was
Yeah.
dope. And then when I was playing with Marcus, we did this group called DMS, which was George, Duke, Marcus, and Sanborn.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah. Wow.
we toured that, and you know, playing with George was super
George
easy.
Duke, Marcus Miller,
and
and David Sanborn. I just wanted to make sure that they heard you.
and Louis Cato on drums.
Okay.
Great
Wow.
drum. I mean, all around wonderful musician. He's a great singer, songwriter, and he plays really good guitar. He's a freak of nature. He plays like some trombone. He's a great bass player, but he was playing drums with us. He's the cat that plays bass on the what's the name of that guy that has that TV show? That John Batiste is the piano player, the musical director.
The show?
Yeah.
Oh, you mean the late night show?
Yeah,
Late
yeah.
night, yeah. I don't watch TV.
The Colbert Report.
Yeah, okay,
or whatever
yeah,
that show.
well, yeah, I don't watch TV, but I know
exactly.
something.
That,
Yeah,
you know it
yeah,
exists.
Yeah, yeah.
There is such a box that connects to cable. You're aware of this
Exactly.
invention. But anyway, the cat playing on the Colbert Report, he plays bass on that show.
Oh, okay.
But he was the drummer in that tour.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Louis Cato, he's great.
So who would you say were your biggest influences in terms of your studying and development?
So, like you said earlier, this is what I say about me sometimes. It's like I'm a drummer that is really a frustrated guitar player, but I play piano.
Okay. All right.
That's who I am. You know, I'm
Okay.
a drummer at heart that is a frustrated guitar player, trying to play guitar through piano.
Really?
Kind
Wow,
of. I mean,
that's
you know,
heavy.
in a way, you know, a little bit. I mean, I've
Okay.
been influenced by a lot of guitar players. Early on, I used to play along to Santana records, you know, play
Wow,
drums
yeah,
along to
yeah.
those records. So I loved his sense of phrasing and all those things at the beginning. And then I've been more influenced by music more than anything than
Okay.
just like a particular guy.
Yeah.
But I'll get around to answer your question though, because I think it's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I definitely been more influenced by music than anything else. But I do remember certain milestones in my life, like the first time I heard the Headhunters, for example.
Gotcha.
I was about 12.
Okay.
And that meant a lot to me because I was like, I didn't know that music was possible. And it felt very,
Wow.
I felt a kinship to it. You know,
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, that is something that is in me, you know? And so I identified with that. But I think it's been stages that like, I used to love a guy named Eddie Jobson that played in this group called UK.
Okay.
Alan Holsworth has been a huge influence on me, the guitar player.
Yeah.
People like that. Mike Stern, I used to love to listen to a lot back when I was in my early 20s. And then, as far as piano, you know, there is a guy that I would be remiss if I didn't talk about him because he's one of the most underrated geniuses of music. And he died a couple years ago, man. Lyle Mays, you know.
What's that?
Lyle Mays.
Lyle
Mays.
Mings?
Mays.
Mins.
You don't know Lyle Mays, man?
Never heard of.
Lyle Mays, like
Lyle Mays.
M-A-Y-S.
Never heard of.
He's the piano player for the Pat Metheny group.
Okay. I'm bebop.
You close-minded jazz police says, what am I doing here? I want to know what I'm doing. What am I doing? And you know what's funny? There's cats over there on the other side.
I'm trying to catch up.
No, I got you. Wait. There's cats on the other side that are probably going, man, I've heard this cat play. What's he doing here? This conversations in jazz. This ain't no honor. This ain't no jazz cat. What's he doing up there?
No, man,
I call myself, I have listen, Rickman. Rickman says I have a jazz complex. And he's right. I got a jazz complex as big as a house. I consider myself an honorary jazz cat. I'm a dude that, like, jazz guys can stomach and play music with. That's kind of who I am.
I disagree.
But no, you got to check out. You got to check out.
I've heard you, bro.
And enough
if
about me.
If I haven't heard you with my own ears, I would. I probably could.
I'm throwing fairy dust at you. Man, Lyle was the thing that happened with Lyle and me was deep, man. Because like there's certain things in life. I always say this thing as far as like pop music. I have this joke that I say, David Foster stole all my stuff before I was born. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Okay.
He stole my stuff before I came, you know?
Yeah.
Because
he got to it first.
Yeah, you know, because I love David Foster.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, who doesn't love like Through the Fire and
See, I always loved all that, like the fusion,
everything. There's only good and bad music. Man.
Yeah,
that's it. There's only two.
But I was chasing Charlie Parker.
Yeah, well, you're sick.
Yeah, I know.
And you've written a few books behind that.
But you know
what's great, dude.
But you know what's crazy, man? I felt like I asked myself, what am I
doing?
Yeah, but I mean, I was just.
He stole your stuff before you got it.
There you
right?
go.
Don't you feel like that?
Oh man. Well, you know, man. I was so one-track minded. I was in the Grover. I'm also equally a Grover, Grover Washington Jr. So my foot was in
both sides.
Yeah, Grover was my dude. I mean, like he had the same impact on me that Charlie Parker had. So I wasn't closed-minded. Like I'm not no
Good
jazz.
For you.
I'm not
Good
a
for
jazz
you,
purist by any stretch of the imagination. There's some jazz I don't like.
Of course. Yeah.
But
of course,
I was chasing jazz, man.
My high pitched voice.
You know, but you know how I started opening my mind? I did a thing I started hanging with Vince Evans, and we had a little tour in Africa. We went like 7 countries in Africa, and just Vince is another cat like that is able to go in these different directions, and just learning from this cat, and he's producing. So it opened my I said, okay, let me open my mind up to some other stuff.
Whole world
yeah, man. So that's why I love. To me, it's all music.
There's
like
entirely too much music out there,
Oh my
to
God,
check
man.
out.
And so the stuff you're doing. I'm chasing. I'm trying to get it. I'm trying to tell you,
I'm chasing what you're doing. I'm trying to learn a bebop line one.
Oh man, come on, man.
No, seriously. I mean, it's the languages of the music is super deep. I mean, they're just deeply and neurologically ingrained, and there's so much there's so much that we could. I mean, it's impossible to cover, the wide range of avenues that music opens up. You asked me a question a little bit earlier, like about my piano teacher and but I'll get to it. Let me put that on hold for a second. To go back, because I do want to talk about this cat just for a second, only because it wasn't so much that he was such a heavy influence, even though he influenced so many cats down in South America. Because the Pat Metheny group has a weird thing where they were heavily influenced by us too, mostly the Brazilian stuff.
Okay.
Like Pat Metheny is heavily influenced by Brazilian guitarists like Toninho Aorta and different cats, Egberto Gismonti, I think, has been an influence on him. And these guys have soaked up some of that stuff and kind of threw it back up in a certain kind of way. And that also affected a lot of, especially in Argentina, there's a whole host of great young piano players, then all of them have that vibe. The thing with me and Lyle that happened was deep was that I was already playing piano for a long time before I heard Lyle. And my friend that I talked about earlier, Alex Fatoruso, he turned me on to the Pat Metheny group. That first, what everybody who's a fan calls the White Album, it's got Face Dance and April Joy and all those songs on it. And the first time I heard that music, I think I was 15. So I'd been playing piano for quite a while.
Yeah.
I was already playing, concerto studies and stuff like that since I was 11.
Wow.
So I had chops.
Yeah.
I probably had way more chops than I do now, frankly.
Yeah.
Seriously. Like, I'm not just saying that. A lot of people like to say
when you're younger, you chasing those chops.
Yeah.
And then when you
But
get older,
I definitely had more chops, for
yeah.
sure. And so, when I first heard Lyle, I was like, it just felt like a part of me already, It really did. I felt like, golly, this guy's playing like the stuff I hear in my heart,
Wow.
And so it was a very weird experience. It was really intimate and a confirmation of sorts, but at the same time, there was a pang of a natural and healthy envy of like, dang, this cat, he's doing the very thing that I only envision can happen, you know? And the deep thing was that my mother, man, I was listening to the stuff one day, and when I had just kind of early on, when I first came into the music, and she heard, Lyle was taking a solo, and she heard this. She came into the room,
Wow.
And she looked at the thing, and I was sitting on the chair, and she looked at me, I thought that was you playing, she said to me.
Wow. And it was loud?
It was Lyle.
Wow.
On this record. So she recognized the same thing that I knew.
Yeah.
You dig what I'm saying?
Yeah.
She recognized that there was a kinship and a kernel of something that we have in common.
Yeah.
This guy and I.
Yeah.
And it was already there.
Did you ever meet him?
Yeah, I met him.
Okay.
You know Gregoire Marais, harmonica player, Gregoire?
No.
You never met Gregoire before? I'd like to think we're still good friends. We had a little bit of a, life sometimes takes you in different paths. And I'd like to think we're sort of on a orbital path that got us a little away from each other. But I'm confident that we're going to come back together. And Gregoire and I were very, very close. He was an amazing harmonica player. Came to live to the States sometime in the mid-'90s. He was like 19. I met him in New York earlier.
wow.
He's from Geneva, Switzerland.
Okay.
His mother is from Martinique. Black woman, was raised in Brooklyn, but like from Martinique, and then she went to Europe.
Gotcha.
Met this Swiss white man, had a couple kids. His younger brother is a pretty good percussionist. He's got a sister too.
Gotcha.
And Gregoire is just like probably one of the baddest harmonica players on the planet.
Wow.
He played with Herbie. He's done a bunch of stuff.
I
He's
might
really
have
well known.
I might have heard him,
I used to bring him to DC all the time, and he'd come and slay cats with his harmonica.
Yeah.
Like
Wow.
he plays chromatic.
I might have even seen him.
Well, he used to be in the Pat Metheny group. He recorded on this album called The Way Up.
Okay.
So that's how I met Lyle, because I was a bit of, I was a little bit of a kind of big brother to Gregoire, and I used to bring him to DC, and we used to hang and play, and we had a group together, him and I and Gene, called Gaia, this trio. And so, and then I hooked him up with Sean, and through that, he met Steve Coleman, and he kind of toured with him a little bit, too. He used to be in Marcus's group for a while.
Yeah.
So, he's done a lot of stuff, and so he knows that I love Lyle, and so he hooked it up. When he was playing with the Pat Metheny group, he arranged a meeting for us to like.
Wow.
And Lyle was a guy who played pool.
What was it like when you met? Like, were you like, wow?
The first time I met Lyle, I went to Berkeley for like a year. I went to.
Yeah. Is that now? I was going to ask you. I know you. Is that why you came to the States to go to Berkeley?
I came to the States because when my father died, my mother kind of was out of sorts and didn't know what to do, and she was through with the political situation in our country, and she thought that the States was it, and she wanted to change.
Oh, so your mom moved to the States as well?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I just came with her.
Where did she initially come to? What state?
DC.
Oh, she moved to DC. Oh, so your mom came. So that's how you got to DC.
My mother married a man to gain access into the country.
Okay, I got you.
You can laugh. I'm not offended.
Oh, no, it's cool. All right.
It took me years to kind of be able to kind of say that out loud, because there's such a stigma, like you got married and cheated to get into the country. The worst part about it is that my mother made herself believe that that's not what she was doing, which is worse.
Yeah.
It's better if you don't front. It's better if you say, you know what, I'm going to marry some dude, and try to gain entry into the United States because I think I can make a better life for myself there.
Yeah, gotcha.
And I'm tired of what's happening over here. My brother was 3 years older than I.
Gotcha.
So he was 20 years old. He didn't want no part of coming here.
Okay.
You dig?
Yeah.
He didn't want to come here. He had his life already going, and he wasn't trying to come here.
Did you have any
I
apprehensions?
didn't want to come here either.
Oh, you had apprehensions about?
Of course.
Yeah. Wow.
Man, in my country, because of this thing that we're talking about in terms of like the friendship and the people's, the warmth of the people, man, I could walk a 5-6 mile radius from my house, and
Wow.
everybody knew me. I knew a lot of people.
I feel that type of energy when I go out this country.
You know what
You
I'm
know,
saying?
I mean, you got those, maybe in the South and but
Small towns.
yeah, I remember going to different places, man, and that's you get that like in Africa, you might see two dudes holding hands, and they're just best friends, and so. And when I was in Africa, I felt they make you feel. They have a way of making you feel. That thing is like no pretension. It's just. It's just,
don't get me wrong. I mean, we still, man,
everything
is everything,
yeah,
right? So
yeah.
we still got shady,
You got your
dirty
issues.
people and bad people, like anything else,
Yeah.
and everywhere. But yeah, no, I was happy where I was. Antonio, let me put it to you in a way that you could really wrap your arms around. I can still tap into a part of myself that is truly amazed at the fact that I speak English every day.
wow. So you didn't speak English?
No.
Wow.
I mean, I did. I went to a school. I went to, a private school. I went to a really good school, and they had all the subjects in English in the morning and all the subjects in Spanish in the afternoon.
Gotcha.
So I had I went to a bilingual school.
Gotcha.
But we were all very sort of embarrassed to speak English.
Really?
When I was
Wow.
a kid,
Yeah.
me and my friends, we were embarrassed to speak English, with
Really?
each other. Your friends, they're ready to joan on you because you're not pronouncing something right or
Oh, wow.
you forgot how to say something. So we were made to speak English, but we weren't like down with it.
Yeah, I got you.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I understood it, for the most part, and I could speak it. A los ponchazos, like we say, like bumper cars.
Yeah.
Kinda. But I wasn't like fluid like that,
Yeah,
you know? I mean, I could make myself understood and be
So
okay.
when you got
but-
to the States, did you have to make some great adjustments?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was that. How old were you
I was almost 18. I like to say I was 18.
And so what made you decide to go to Berkeley?
Well, I didn't decide. I mean, it was like when my mother, you hear, outside the world, you hear like Berkeley. So I was thinking, okay, I was trying to reconcile my new reality. It was like, okay, my crazy mother wants to go to the States, and my brother was no part of it, but this woman is going crazy. If I don't go with her, I don't know what's going to happen to her. I don't know if she's going to kill herself. I don't know if she's going to end up in an insane asylum. I don't know what's going to happen to this woman if I don't go with her. And it was that real. You dig what I'm saying?
I got you.
And it wasn't beyond the realm of possibility. I mean, her sister, my aunt, took a gun to her head when I was 5 years old and blew the back of her head off.
Wow.
You dig what I'm saying? So there were some things in their upbringing that were very painful. I think it had to do with the fact that when they left Spain and came to Argentina, and my grandmother being the bohemian that she was more interested, according to my mother, she was always way more interested in, hanging out and carousing and kicking it and having lovers and living that life.
Yeah.
Instead of like really taking care of her daughters. So they went to a boarding school immediately. They didn't speak. She put them in a Scottish boarding school. These girls didn't speak one lick of English, and they put them in a school in which it was completely in English the whole time.
Wow.
A boarding school at that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So her sister had some trauma, and their father apparently was also like bad news. He didn't want either of the girls. So they had some deep scars, man. My mother was a deeply scarred person. She was a difficult person to be the son of,
Wow. Yeah.
Very much so. I mean, she was a lioness also. As a mother, she was super protective and a lioness, but she has some deep scars to get over, man. So I didn't know what was gonna happen with her. So I came with her. You dig what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I was already like looking in the back of records and digging on these musicians. And so I started kind of thinking, well, maybe I can see what might happen if I go to the States and pursue this music thing. Little did I know that I landed in D.C. that got no music. So, it's not L.A., it's not New York. There's no industry here.
Yeah, gotcha.
And I landed in the middle of the hood. I landed on Branch Avenue and Curtis Drive, across the street from Carriage Hill. That's where I lived.
Wow. Yeah.
At Top of the Hill Apartments.
Yeah.
Right behind the Quonset.
Wow.
Remember the old Quonset?
And you came here in the 80s?
83.
Okay.
Right before 83 was out. So like
Yeah.
end of 83, 84.
Okay.
Wow. I came here in the midst
And
of
crack and stuff was
it's
great.
ramping up.
Yeah,
It wasn't
yeah,
even
it was
fully
popping.
here yet.
Yeah.
It was about to be mayhem.
Yeah.
You dig what I'm saying? It was about to be mayhem.
Yeah.
And so I was in the thick of it.
Yeah.
I was, a couple blocks away from Southeast.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Temple Hills
Yeah,
wasn't no picnic. It had been kind of a nice little suburb of
Yeah.
PG, but it was like already,
Yeah.
rickety raw. And that's the circles that I moved in, man. I didn't know nothing, man. You know what I'm saying?
Were you scared?
I wasn't scared. No, I wasn't scared because I knew nothing, man.
Okay.
You have to have some kind of frame of reference in order to be scared.
Yeah,
I had no
doubt.
idea
Wow.
of where I really was.
Wow.
And by the time I did know,
Yeah.
when some years had gone by and
Yeah.
I realized where I was,
Yeah.
I was there. So I was like, well, I ain't got to be scared because it's cool. I'm all right, you know? Why am I gonna be scared? I mean, I was apprehensive in terms of like fear of the unknown. You know what I mean? Like the first night that I spent in our apartment at Top of the Hill Apartments over there, I looked out my window and I saw the parking lot full of cars parked, and I said, "What the hell did I do?"
Wow.
And I had tears coming down my face. Like it was the saddest thing ever, man. Because I was like, this is my life now. Like, there's no turning back. Because from Argentina, I can only envision and imagine.
That's what you call a culture shock. You had a culture.
Negro. What? I mean, because it wasn't, like, just like, it wasn't even about like black culture and nothing but black people. It had nothing to do with that. It was like American culture.
Yeah.
Like I'm in a whole nother country.
Yeah.
People are speaking a whole nother language. Like what am I doing here?
Yeah.
Because like I said, from the comfort of my own country and surroundings and home, I was this kid looking in the back of records dreaming. But whatever I constructed in my imagination had nothing to do with, the reality of Branch Avenue and Curtis Drive. You dig what I'm saying?
I got you.
Because America's almost greatest asset, if you will, I think, culturally speaking in a certain kind of way, is its PR.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I can see that. Yeah.
So through film and all these,
Yeah.
mostly film,
Yeah.
the rest of the world gets to see or have a sense for what America is.
There was no internet.
And many times when you're at the pinnacle of something, like let's say that if you're lost in New York, back when the World Trade Center was standing, you could always look up and see the towers, right?
Yeah.
So let's say that you were a tourist, but your hotel was in Soho. So you were near Wall Street.
Yeah.
If you look up and them joints are far, well, at least you got to head in that direction.
Yeah.
Generally speaking.
Gotcha.
Then you can ask people and orient yourself.
Yeah.
But you can't go that way because
You got. Yep.
And so the rest of the world, America was this beacon, this thing. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. Like we can see y'all way more clearly than y'all can see the rest of the world.
Gotcha. Beautiful. Yeah.
You dig what I'm
Beautifully
saying?
put. Yeah.
It really is like that. So I had a whole idea that it's not what it was.
Wow.
So when I got here, it was like, this is not what I thought it was. This is not what I signed up for. You dig what I'm saying?
So at what point did you get acclimated? And
Never. Never. I'm still waiting to get acclimated. No, it's a heavy thing, man. The more as I grow, I start to realize, and looking back in my life, I realized that, moving and leaving a place where you're from is a really super heavy, deep thing to do. It's hard. it takes a lot of courage. In this case, it took the kind of unconscious lack of knowledge to know what I was doing.
But if you think about,
I don't know that I would have done it. Knowing what I know now, I'm not sure I would have come.
yeah,
Sometimes, I think that way.
from my vantage point, when you think about your story coming to this and the things that you've accomplished musically,
Right.
it's amazing to me. It shows, it's amazing that people here, born and raised, haven't done some and been some on some of the stages that you've been on.
That's true. There is an element of luck, though. You do need luck. Like people say, well, luck is nothing but opportunity meeting preparation. I mean, yeah, that's nice, and it's true. I'm not saying that it's
Yeah.
not true. There's an element of that is 99% true. Like, I mean, if opportunity comes, you have to be prepared, right? But
Yeah.
that's not how it happened for me. I mean, I was lucky. I'll give you a brief synopsis of what happened, man. I had, like I told you before, I was into a lot of different things when I was growing up. My father was really well off. I know a little bit of both sides, I grew up not with a silver spoon because my father was a self-made man. My grandfather was a postal worker, and they had their conflict. My father lived essentially in the streets. He was in cargo ships, in the bowels of cargo ships, going to Brazil, undetected, selling bananas during the day in Rio and coming back home and eating what he could, stealing from the market or whatever. My father was not a silver spoon person, a blue blood.
Yeah.
But through his wit and his abilities, he made himself into this man who had a lot of money. My father was kind of a Renaissance man. He hosted a couple of TV shows. I mean, when I say my father was famous, he was famous. You know what I'm
Wow.
saying? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I used to walk down the street with him and random people
Wow.
just want to come and touch him.
Yeah. Wow.
So I had a kind of access and privilege in the truest sense of the word, not in this white privilege stupidity that people are on these days. I'm talking about like a real access to things that were amazing. I grew up knowing the famous soccer players in my time.
Wow. Yeah.
And as a kid, it's a dream, dude.
Yeah.
In 1978, when Argentina won the World Cup, the Soccer World Cup, 15 minutes later, I was in the locker room.
Wow. Yeah.
It's even greater than a Super Bowl. So imagine if you're you're 7, 8 years old. I was 12 at the time. Imagine you're 12 years old. The Patriots win the Super Bowl, and you're in the locker room hanging out with Brady and those cats.
Wow.
That was my life.
But
I had that. But then my father died
gotcha.
when I was young, and all of that went away.
Gotcha.
And then I had a mother who never really had a job.
Yeah.
Whose skill was she got a nursing degree. She didn't use that. She didn't know what she was going to do in life and how she was going to do it. And so I lived through not having money, not having anything, and also coming from, maybe not having anything, but definitely now you're in a new country. You don't know nobody. Nobody knows you. What you going to do? How you going to do anything? Yeah. And so what happened was, before we left Argentina, I was also into horses. I used to ride horses. And,
You used to ride horses?
Yeah. I used to do show jumping and stuff. So,
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So this is what my father was like. That's what I'm telling you. He was well off. And my brother used to ask for things. I never asked for anything. I always was content,
Gotcha.
which is kind of a good and a bad thing. That's where my lack of ambition comes from.
Yeah.
But my brother used to always ask for things, and he asked my father, "Man, I like horses. I want to ride." So we did that. And then I had my own horse. My brother did too. And then
You had your own horse?
Yeah. Before we left, I sold my horse. I had to see him because we were coming here.
Gotcha.
So I had a little bit of money from that. I bought some keyboards.
Wow.
I bought me a Rhodes. I already owned a Moog Prodigy and a Korg Delta string synthesizer. But I played piano for 10 years before I ever laid my hands on a keyboard. So piano is home. But then, it's the electronic stuff is also calling me.
Did you buy a keyboard there or did you buy it with
My
your-
first time visiting the United States was in 1981. It was February 7th, 1981. My father had died September 4th of 1980. I was 14. I turned 15 on the 5th of February. 2 days later, I set foot for the first time in New York City.
Wow.
Because my mother was like, you know what? As a family, it's kind of heavy. My pops died and shit.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's let's go. Let's take a trip. So we had a little bit of money. There was some money saved up. So we went to the States to visit. So we came to New York. We were in New York for a month. Then we went to Miami to Orlando for about 6 days to visit, like, do the Disney World vibe. And then we spent 3 days in Miami, which my mother hated because it reminded her of home. And so we're in Miami for 3 days, and then we went back home to Argentina. So we got back in mid-March, which is the end of summer for us.
She didn't like it because it reminded her of art. Okay, I got you.
It was all humid, hot. There was a lot of people who spoke Spanish everywhere.
Got you.
So she, but New York was like frigid cold. We got to New York, and I hung, man. I hung in New York. My mother gave my brother and I some money, and
You were checking out
was
music?
free. Yeah, I checked out music, but I was like into the rock thing at the time.
Okay, got you.
I didn't know jazz
Yeah,
like
the
that.
jazz,
You know?
yeah.
I mean, I knew from my father and stuff like that, but I didn't know like where to find it. You know what I mean?
Wow. So you learned your jazz thing here while you were here in the States?
Yeah, I would
Wow.
say so. I would say so.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's how I got closer to the music. You know what I mean?
Wow, that's heavy.
So yeah, I went. Man, I remember. I was 15, dude. I went to Radio City Music Hall, and I scalped a ticket for some brother, who must have been from the hood somewhere. And cats are out there,
Yeah.
This is New York, early '80s, and this dude had like tickets, and it was this band called UFO and Cheap Trick were playing.
Really?
Like these rock cats, you know. Michael UFO was a great kind of like heavy rock group.
Did you like New York? Did you like the vibe?
I loved it.
You did?
It was amazing.
Yeah.
It was crazy. It was crazy. I really dug. I dug it. It was dope.
Yeah.
And it was just different. It was a whole nother planet. But that lasted a month. We went back.
Yeah.
I had no inkling that we would end up living here. But on my trip, to answer your question, one of the goals was, I had a little bit of money, and my mother was like, "Look, I'll buy you a synth." So we went to. There was an Argentine. On 48th over there on Broadway, where all the music stores used to be, there was a store called Alex Music, and it was owned by an Argentine guy.
Wow.
And so I didn't know that, so I went there and I was checking out some keyboards, and they had a Moog Prodigy, like the little brother to the mini Moog. And so I got a Moog Prodigy.
And you took it back to Argentina?
Yeah, but I needed to play some chords, and this thing was monophonic, so I'm like,
Yeah.
"Hey, Mom, I need some chords." And so we bought like a chord delta string synthesizer.
Wow.
Which was deep. It was almost like trying to be like an ARP string ensemble now that I think about it, but it really kind of wasn't. Chord delta, and it had two levers. That one was a synthesizer side, and the other one was a string side.
Okay.
And on the string side, all you could affect was the envelopes, like ADSR, like attack, decay, sustain, release. That's all you could do. But on the synth side, you had a little bit of manipulation with. I think it had one oscillator. Maybe it had two, but I think it had one.
Okay.
And so that's how I got into that thing. But then 3 years later, when we came to live here, I sold my horse and I had a little bit of cash. So I bought myself a Rhodes for $500. I bought myself a Juno 6, a Roland Juno 6, and a Prophet 600, which was the first MIDI keyboard ever.
Wow.
And so I had 5 keyboards in my bedroom at Top of the Hill Apartments.
Wow.
I had I had my spaceship and a bed. That's all the room I had.
So that gave you a sense of peace in this new environment?
Yeah.
Yeah, gotcha.
I bought myself like a big EV speaker and a powered mixer, and I was.
Man, you a great communicator. We'd be sitting here talking forever, but I wanted to cover on a few people. We gonna your connection with Me'Shell NdegoOcello.
That's where I was about to go.
Oh, okay.
If you hadn't cut me off.
I'm sorry, baby.
No, because the question begs to be answered, and you've been asking it, how did any of this happen? You dig what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, I was in my room playing to nobody, and I had to finish 1 year of high school because I missed a year in the interim. Y'all's school year starts in August, September, and for us it starts March. It goes March to December. So when I left school and I lost a lot of time. I was in the studio the whole time. In Argentina, but then I came here and it was like, so I had to finish a year, like a little bit over a year of high school.
Okay.
So I went to a little rinky-dink school called Capital Lutheran High School on Silver Hill Road across the street from Suitland High School.
Okay.
And so I had a couple little friends in school. And that's where I discovered go-go music, because I would be at homeroom, and there was a cat named Daryl, and this other dude named John, and it was a couple cats, and they come in, and Harold Massey from Capitol Heights. These cats were from Capitol Heights.
Yeah.
And they would come in, and they would be like, "Man, I went to the Coliseum this weekend, and I went to see Essence. White Boy was killing," and I'm like, and they'd be like, "White Boy was like." I'd be listening, because I always love. I'm curious person. I always love to listen to other people's conversations. And I was like, "What these cats talking about, right?" And I'm a musician, so I'm like, "Hey, man, like, what are y'all talking about?" And I already had the experience when I first came to live here. I was the shiny new object.
Gotcha.
The school was small. It was like only 150, 200 students tops. Man, cats were asking me all kinds of stuff. Like, were the roads paved where I came from? Do we have gauchos on horseback on the streets? This kind of thing. The little white kids were asking me this kind of thing, The black kids, they had no idea about Argentina. They were like, "Where you from? Australia?" I said, "No, I'm from South America." "South Africa?" It was deep. So, like, and then they asked me, did I like music? And I said, "Yeah, I like music." I didn't say I'm a musician. "Yeah, I like music." "What kind of music do you like?" And I started naming groups, and I say, I don't know, I like, Al Jarreau, Larry Carlton, Genesis. This. They didn't know any of that stuff,
Wow.
So it was, to your point, culture shock. But these kids were talking about some stuff that they had just seen over the weekend.
Yeah.
And I'm like, "What y'all talking about?" "Man, I went to see Essence." I'm like, "What's Essence?" "Man, you don't know where Essence?" I'm like, "No."
Yeah.
What are you talking about? "Go-go music." I said, what's go-go music?
Wow.
You know what I mean? And then at a school dance, I went to a school dance, and they played Body Moves.
They play who?
Body Moves, this Rare Essence song.
Yeah.
And I heard the bass player on there, and I was like, "Oh my God!" And I was sitting next to the speaker, like, for like half an hour listening to all these go-go tunes. Like, I couldn't believe what was happening.
Wow.
So that's kind of the context in which I was existing. I just had this little high school experience, a handful of friends, and my keyboards in my room. I didn't know nobody, Antonio.
Yeah.
I had no car. On the weekends, I would grab a handful of quarters, and I would walk up to Iverson Mall and sit there at the arcade over there and play Tron for hours.
Wow.
I might come back, and there was, the Subway shop over there. Well, there was a Subway shop. It's still there, but it was in a different location, right there in the little strip mall by Sam's Car Wash. And I would go in there and get me a sandwich. One time I was at the Subway shop, and it was cold, man. Life in America was different, man. It used to be like a lot of people.
Yeah.
A lot of people. And so I remember going to the Subway shop one day during the week, and there was a bunch of cats in there, full. I ordered my sandwich, and I'm hanging out. And then, by then, I had already listened to Trouble Funk, this and that. So I was playing, like, that beat, that Let's Get Small beat? It goes like, boom, sack it, boom, 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 tack it, boom, tack it, boom, sack it, boom, 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 tack. So I was just absent-mindedly playing that on the counter. Not too loud, but I was just kind of kicking that beat, And there was a cat next to me, and I had peeped his vibe because he seemed weird to me. He seemed like he jumped out of Fame. The music.
Yeah.
like the cat had jeans and leg warmers up to here. He had a Jerry curl. Yeah. He looked different from all the other Negroes in the spot. And I'm like, this cat got something going on. I thought maybe he was gay because he looked like maybe he was a dancer.
That was the 80s look.
but it was deeper. But man, this is a place where a lot of blue collar brothers were ordering the sandwich. And here was this dude with leg warmers up to here and a Jerry curl, and he was talking to he had a chick with him, and she was fine.
Wow.
But I could tell that they weren't dealing.
Yeah.
That they didn't have this kind of. It wasn't a sex thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, maybe this dude is gay. I don't. So whatever. I was just kind of not paying him no mind. He was right next to me, and then he literally goes, "Oh man, you like Trouble Funk?"
Wow.
He picked up the beat that was mine. I said,
Wow.
I said, yeah, I like Trouble. And that's all I said, And so I in my mind, I was thinking, this cat gotta be a musician. He just heard like the beat.
Yeah.
And so like, he didn't say nothing to me for another 2 minutes or so. And then out of nowhere, he literally went, "Hey man, do you know any keyboard players?"
Wow.
Now, there is an aspect of fate and God.
No
this
doubt.
didn't have to happen. I mean,
Yeah.
literally, that's what this cat said to me. It seemed like strange to me that he would do that, And the impact of it, it's now coming back to me. Like, I really have to believe that was definitely God. I look back to
So that might be the impetus for all the stuff that you
No, that was the seed. That began.
Yeah.
I knew no one.
Wow.
Antonio, I knew no musicians.
Wow.
I used to walk up to Iverson Mall and there was a Jordan Kids Music. I used to play over there.
Yeah.
And I met a guy who was a salesperson there, and he had a little recording situation at home. In the 80s, it wasn't what it is now. And I hung out with him. I went to his crib, but he was not a good musician, and I didn't really. And I met maybe another guy through there, and he was also like not good. The only thing that came through that is I bought a Rhodes off of somebody. But other than that, I knew no one. I knew no cats. No, you're not. So I was going to get to anything. I looked at my boy. I was like, this got to be kidding. This dude must. I said, well, I play a little bit. I told him. And he goes, don't move. And he left. So I'm going like, what the hell? And he comes back 5 minutes later. He goes, listen, man. We got a band. We rehearse right next door. We're looking for a keyboard player. Can you come to? Do you have keyboard? I was like, yeah. And I was apprehensive, because
you don't know if they were trying to set you up.
No, but sometimes change is not something that it's weird. Change is weird for me. Like I resist change, but then when I go through it, I take to it like a fish to water.
I mean, did you get the sense that this person was legit? Or
yeah.
Okay.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, the earnest fight, because he was very much like a thirsty man.
Yeah.
So I just sometimes don't like to be committing to anything.
I got you. Yeah.
So I was like, so I said, yeah, he's like, man, we play next door. Can you come through? Just come and check us out. I said, okay, whatever. So I went there, and I met the cats, and it was like a hair salon. And in the back of the hair salon, there was a door, and you went in there, and they kept and there was a big room where they kept all their like cleaning products or whatever.
Yeah.
And so there was a band there.
Wow.
Rehearsing in the back of the hair salon. It was closed. It was after hours. It was like 9 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock, whatever. And it's these 4 cats, the bass player, and this cat was the bass player. His name is Terry Holland. He's from Annapolis. Funky bass player. Yeah. And so the band was a band by this guy named Rick Webb, who was like a Chitlin Circuit kind of like Smokey Robinson impersonator. It's a real country dude.
Gotcha.
Who was like, sounded like Smokey. So he starts talking to me, and he's like, and they're mistrustful of me.
Huh?
They're mistrustful of me. They didn't know what to make of me.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Here we are in the middle of, especially at that time, and even now, you go to Temple, you don't see white folks over there. You don't see nothing other than black folks.
Yeah.
I'm this Hispanic kid that just came off the boat a couple of months ago. And to them, I must have looked white, and they're looking at me who's the what? I'm sorry, you say you live where? I live right over there in the
That's hilarious.
You know what I mean? So now that I know, or even after a few years, I go, oh, y'all must have super tricked on me. Because there was silence in there. It was like you could hear a pin drop, like a movie. And I'm like, these cats, I was like, why are they being so weird? This cat was so excited about a keyboard player. And now they're all looking at me like, and only one person is talking to me. I thought the whole thing was a little weird. So I was like, okay. I didn't hear them play. They were on a break. So the cat tells me, so you say you live around the corner, huh? I said, yeah. He used to do that. And do you live with your mother? I said, yeah. And do you have keyboards? I said, yeah. Let's go to my house. I'll grab a keyboard and we'll just jam. So he walked me over to my crib. And now is my mother's perspective. Here's this woman, her 18-year-old son, who knows nobody, now walks in with this brother who's in his mid-30s.
Wow.
And she's going, who's this man? What? And I'm like, I just met them at the joint. Where are you going? I'm like, just to right by this joint. They're practicing over. So I opened the door to my room, and he told me later, but he was kind of quiet and he was looking around. He told me later that he was shocked.
Wow.
Because he was like,
when he saw you set up?
Right.
Wow.
I had Rhodes, Prophet 600. I had the Rhodes, the Moog Prodigy, and the Korg, and I had the Prophet here, and I had the Juno to my right. I had all these keyboards and the bed. So he was like, wow. So I just unhooked the Juno. I had no case for it. I unhooked the joint, put it on my arm, and off we went. And we jammed, and we jammed over like a E minor vamp for like 10, 15, 20 minutes. And when we was done, I took a little solo, whatever. And when we were done, we finished, and this again, silence. You could hear a pin drop, and the cats were looking at each other, and and I thought they hated me,
Really?
And so they were like,
Wow.
"What you think?" And they were like, "Sounds cool to me." And these brothers were like, hilarious. And they were country, because later these cats became my brothers. You know what I mean?
No doubt.
Because they raised me up,
Yeah.
from a puppy, and they were from like down the country, Wason's Corner area,
Wow.
PG County down south, where in the 70s there were still like colored fountains
that's funny, man.
and whatnot.
You say, hey, sound good to me.
Yeah, cats were, and so it was like, so I started playing with them, and the thing was, I couldn't understand 30% of what they said. I understood.
Yeah. Wow.
Because he's country.
Yeah.
And
And they had to ask,
talking their thing, and I'm sitting over here like, what are you saying? What are y'all saying? You know what I mean? So that kind of, so I kind of started playing with them, and we used to rehearse every Sunday night, every Tuesday night, and every Thursday night. Religiously. From 8 to 11, and then we'd hang out afterwards and hang out, and, And so... But so my school grades started going to shit,
You in 12th grade right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And so Monday morning, my first class was calculus.
Oh, God.
It was and I started with like an A. My first semester, my first quarter, I had an A. Then I had like a B minus. Then I had like a D. Because Monday morning, I was always like this.
Wow.
Tired, sleep, because we've been up hanging out till 1 in the morning the night before. Every Tuesday, every Thursday. And I played with these cats for like a couple of years. So maybe a year into my playing with them or so, earlier than that, because I was still 18. We went to a studio to do a session. There was a studio in the back of Eastover Shopping Center in Southeast that was owned by the guy who owns Discount Mart.
Okay.
And he had a studio there. And so we went there, and they tell me, we're going to go to the studio, and it's a surprise. He said, the engineer is I think you're going to like the engineer. I say, okay. And then they tell me the engineer happens to be the bass player for Rare Essence.
Wow.
And I had already had that experience where I really freaked on body moves.
Wow.
So I said, I'm eager to meet this cat. You know what I mean? Because I love his playing already.
Yeah.
So I went there and I met him, and his name is Mike Neal, Funky Ned, we call him, right? So, and he's a very quiet dude. And so we did the session. It was a couple of days. I did my overdubs or whatever. So after the second day, and he never really said 2 words to me. But then when we were leaving after the second day, he said, hey, man, where do you live? I said, right up the street, up Southern Avenue and Naylor, like top of the hill apartments. He's like, oh, okay. I like the way you play, man. Leave me your number. So it's cool. We exchanged numbers, and I started hanging out with Ned. I started hooking up with him and going to the studio and this and that. And after a couple of months, of us kind of religiously sitting there playing and jamming together to a drum machine and whatnot, I started playing on little recordings that he did over there. And then one day he had White Boy, Andre Johnson. They call him White Boy not because he's light-skinned. They call him White Boy because one summer early on with Essence, he had gone away and copped like a bunch of Eddie Van Halen stuff and came back playing distortion. So they called him White Boy off of that.
Funny.
Yeah, that's why they call him White Boy. So him and White Boy were at the studio, and Ned told me, he's like, I want to bring Andre by so he can meet you and whatever. So we jammed to like a drum machine, and when we finished playing, Andre said, they were looking for a keyboard player in Essence, and said, would I be into like doing some gigs with them? And I was super down. I was like, hell yeah. This is before Berkeley. I was still in school. You know? And so I started playing with Essence, and then that was a couple of years. But early on, about a year into it or so, maybe a little less, Ned called me one day. He said, man, you might want to come to the gig early because there's this girl playing bass with Prophecy. And they used to open for us. They used to play right before us at Southeast Gardens at the Go-Go back then. And he was like, man, this is a girl playing bass for Prophecy, and she's killing. And it was Me'Shell.
Wow.
And Me'Shell was 16.
Wow.
So I met her, I was 18.
I knew her dad, Chaka.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
So I met her, I was 18 when we met. or maybe I had just turned 19. You know.
So what were y'all relationship? I mean,
Our relationship was like completely like the day I met her, you know, because I did go to the Go-Go early that day to check her out, and to me, she was like a little Ned. She sounded like Michael a little bit, you know. She was very influenced by him, and but what struck me the most from her was her presence on stage.
Okay.
You know, she wasn't engaging the crowd at all, but she had a magnetism you couldn't take your eyes off of her.
Wow.
And I don't know if it was. I'd hate to think it was just because she was a girl, because I don't think it was that.
Yeah.
It was just how she owned the stage and the bass. She was walking around like she was killing, you know, she was owning that moment, that space.
Yeah.
And her note
Did y'all,
was huge.
personality-wise, did y'all?
Immediately. You
Really?
know?
Okay.
So, like, I met her, they came off the stage and Ned introduced us, and she had a really nice, open vibe. She was a 16-year-old kid, you know, so she was, like, wide open. And so we had a nice vibe, and then she hung out and checked us out. And it was Byron BJ who passed some time back, man. And he and I were playing keys. And I remember there was some times where I was playing cowbell and keys at the same time, because I used to like play the bell in the go-go thing. And she was like freaking out, you know. She was by the keyboards and she was like jumping up and down and freaking out over what we were playing. And so immediately we hung and we started hanging out, just her and I, a lot. You know, she used to come to my crib. She saw the whole spaceship in my house. And, you know, I used to, and then her home life was a little tough. So, you know, she used to sometimes ask me to come and get her, you know, when her parents fought or whatever. She was in Oxon Hill, so 5 minutes I'd be there and I'd grab her and we'd go. Yeah. And I turned her on to different musics like Zawano. She never really heard Zawano.
Wow.
And she never heard Mike Stern, and she never heard, like, there was a group called Scritti Politti. It was a duo. It was like pop music, but it was super funky and really dope. A guy who arranged and programmed all the keyboards and a singer. This guy, David Gamson. But the group was called Scritti Politti. So Me'Shell and I just imbibed a lot of vibe, and then we played with Lil Benny and the Masters together.
Lil Benny.
You know, we were in that group together, so we were kicking it. We were kicking it. She got pregnant. She moved to New York. You know, I kind of lost track of her for a moment, and then she tried to call me to play on the first record, and my phone was off. I hadn't paid the bill. Then I changed numbers, and I ran into Jacques one day, and he goes, "Man, where you been?" I ran into him at some gig somewhere. He's like, "Me'Shell's been looking for you, man. She got signed and she's been looking for you." You know? And I was like, "Oh, man." And I gave him my new number, which was crazy. My number was 301-505-0002.
Wow.
So I gave him a new number, and he was like, and the next day, Me'Shell called me and was like, "Dude, where you been?" And I'm like,
wow.
"Hey, man, my bad, blah." But by then I had been playing with Piece of a Dream. I was a little older now. I was like probably, this is 93, so I was about 27. So a lot of time had gone by, but we always were in each other's lives. And then, you know, because when her stuff started to happen, like before she got signed and all that, she started writing with Michael. So we were deeply connected musically and all that.
So real quick.
I talk too much, Antonio, man.
No, I love it.
I'm sorry, man.
No, but I wanted to cover it. There's certain things I wanted to cover. I wanted to cover your relationship with Marshall Keys, which you meet him real short, because I know y'all had a musical chemistry for a long time, and to this day. Yeah. Give me a little brief synopsis of that.
You know, like,
and Sean Rickman.
Like from the go-go thing, the Sean Rickman is crazy thing. That story is really crazy.
Okay. He kind of told me, but you got to go.
He told you?
Yeah, he told me.
Well, let's see if they line up. So with Marshall is like, Marshall, it wasn't nothing deep, you know. Like I said, I mean, I was first the Chitlin Circuit vibe and a lot of R&B and top 40 thing, but that led into what Me'Shell and I refer to as Go-Go University. So I played with Essence for a while, and then Benny. I played with Chuck for a hot minute. And then I was in a band called Sluggo, which was dope, but never really saw the light of day because Miles took Ricky from us.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
See, people think that Miles took Ricky from Chuck.
Miles Davis, y'all.
People think Miles took Ricky from Chuck, but he didn't. They'd been left Chuck. Glenn Ellis and Roland Smith and Ricky Wellman had left Chuck and formed a band called Sluggo.
Wow.
You dig? And so, but Sluggo was like an offshoot for them. So they did a single that had made some noise. We did the Back to School Boogie at the RFK one year, But then they went back to pops. They kept playing with Chuck. But then a couple years later, or a year and a half later, they left him again, and this time for good. And we were rehearsing, ready to come out. And the band was Ricky Wellman on drums, obviously, Glenn Ellis on bass, Roland Smith on vocals and percussion, Mike Scott on guitar. You know Mike?
I heard about.
He's from D.C., but he was Prince. He's Prince's longest tenured guitar player ever.
Yeah. Okay.
He left here one day. He packed his little car and his guitars, and went to Minneapolis in search of Prince.
Wow.
He already
found him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And then he was Prince's guitar player for a long, long time.
Okay.
Super funky. So Mike was on guitar, super funky. And then my man Maceo Bond, who used to play in a band called Osiris from the 70s here in D.C., he and I on keys and the P-Funk horns.
Wow.
Shorty Greg, Benny Cowan, and Greg Boyer.
Yeah.
We were killing.
Wow.
And nobody really ever heard that because we only rehearsed. Because one day I come to rehearsal and everybody looked like somebody died.
Wow.
They'd all been crying. Lil Benny and them used to rehearse after us or before us. I can't remember. In the same spot. And Benny was crying. Everybody had been crying. I could tell everybody had been crying. I said, who died?
Wow.
Literally. I'm like, who died? Like, nah, man. Rick. So I said, what happened? So they tell me.
What?
Miles called Ricky.
Wow.
And I was like, that's great. Why y'all crying?
Yeah.
Why y'all crying, man?
Yeah.
And but I see now, I mean, DC has these cats, think about it, man. They play with Chuck.
Yeah.
They were making top dollar.
Yeah.
They were making as much money, give or take, as maybe touring musicians in R&B groups were making, having to leave the country, having to leave their home. Chuck was paying, man. Ricky probably was making $400 a gig, and they were playing on average 5 times a week, maybe more.
I used to sub with Chuck, so I
But that's even later because you're younger.
Yeah.
So like I'm talking about the go-go swing
back
days,
in it,
like when it was like Chuck was here.
Wow.
You dig what I'm saying?
Yeah.
$400 a gig.
That was
how
good.
much? How much were you making with Chuck?
I made 3.
A gig.
Yeah.
There you go.
Just
you see what I'm saying? And how many nights a week did you?
I was sub for Brian Mills, so I wasn't in the band, but
Right. But by the time Brian came, it was. I mean, Chuck was definitely popular, and he was still commanding that money, no question about it. But he was slowing down a little bit.
I got you.
I'm talking about like
It was
Chuck.
Wow.
You dig?
Yeah.
So
I was eating.
Oh man, a 4-night, a 4-gig week was a slow week.
Wow.
If you did 3 gigs that week, it was super slow. On the regular, they were doing 5 to 7 gigs a week.
Wow.
And you clock in that kind of money, you're making $3,000. If you're Ricky and Glenn, you're making $3,000 a week from home, chilling.
Yeah.
For years.
Okay.
So
wow, sounds great.
that also, and then also the unknown. Now he's playing this music. I mean, Ricky's a great go-go drummer. Now he's got to go play with Miles.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of trepidation. But anyway, that happened. So I got connected. See how I am, man? I'm crazy. So then Mike Scott turned me on to Tacoma Station, that guitar player. He was like, we used to run the streets together.
Yeah.
And he was super in demand. So he was a straight hustler too.
Yeah.
So like people really wanted him on their gig. So Mike would triple book himself. He would tell somebody, somebody had a gig that started, from 6 to 9, and then somebody else had it. So he'd go, I can make your first set, but then I got to bounce because I got another gig.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And they'd pay him the full money.
Yeah.
And then he'd tell the middle cats, like, I can come, I'm going to miss the first set, but I can do your middle set. And like that, and he'd do 2 or 3 gigs a night sometimes on the weekend.
Yeah.
Just get in his car and just be taking Bama's money in town.
Yeah.
And he would bring me along, like, you're my
So
boy, come.
when you say Tacoma Station, now, like, was this late 80s?
This was...
or middle 80s?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I was young. I was 19.
Because that's when
Marshall was playing.
Marshall was playing.
That was his heyday.
Yeah,
he
yeah,
started
yeah,
there,
so-
and it was like him and I mean Kilgo was playing drums,
yeah.
and like I guess John Osmond and Glenn Douglas and Chuck Underwood. What's his name? Was still living here at the time from the Blackbirds. Tony.
Anthony. Kevin Tony.
Kevin Tony. My bad.
Okay.
Kevin
Yeah.
Tony.
Wow.
Yeah, Kevin Tony was still.
Yeah.
I caught the tail end of him.
Okay.
So I didn't know what the conversation was. So
Yeah.
Mike after rehearsal, he's like, "Come on, man, let's go. I got this chick some
It was pop.
because he also liked other kind of music. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Sometimes in the go-go thing, cats were just like,
Yeah.
this one thing that's a very little known fact. A lot of those musicians back in the day, a lot of those go-go cats, those stalwarts, those legends, those icons of the music, they would put the music down sometimes, man. They would talk bad about go-go, you know?
Really?
Sometimes.
Wow.
Because they were really good musicians and they felt like the music was below what they could do. But I looked at it as this phenomenon because it is a phenomenon.
Yeah.
And we didn't devote enough time talking about the music itself, but you need to do 2 parts with me because I've got too much.
Yeah,
I got
I
too
know,
much.
man.
I talk too much. It's because I talk too much.
But we're going to do 2 because it's stuff I want to know about. So,
So the way I connect with Marshall is like Mike Scott was like, "Yo, man, there's a whole. You gotta check out Tacoma Station." And we went. We didn't go in. We too hood to go in, man.
yeah.
You know what I mean? We were just. I had a bandana and my clothes. You know what I mean? I had holes in my jeans. I had a bandana. Mike was wearing like a vest. He was all buff. He had bracelets and this and a tattoo and then we were looking through the window and people were looking at like, what's up with these cats? These thugs outside the street, you know. So I was
And Tacoma was popping that day. You know, it was up. It kind of.
It was like
kinda,
it had a
I remember
Howard University.
'cause I came
a lot of business cats.
I came to DC in '87.
Oh yeah,
and I used to go see Paul Carr.
Yeah, you caught the thick of it. You know,
so
that's what it was.
Yeah.
But the thing that happened, man, with Marshall, it was nothing special. One day it was a Saturday. I was sitting at the crib, like bored. I remember I was laying in my bed bored. My phone rang, and you know, it was Marshall, and I knew who he was because of that day. And, so, and it was Marshall, and I'd never spoken to him before, and I don't know how he got my number. And he said it was a Halloween night, and he said, you know, I got your number, blah, 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 and we got a gig tonight, but the keyboard player can't make it or whatever. Can you come? And I said, sure, but I don't know any other music. I don't know what y'all gonna play. So he said, no, but we need to cover the night. It'll be okay. And then in typical Marshall fashion, before he hangs up the phone, he tells me, I don't feel really well, so I'm not sure that I'm gonna be there.
Wow.
I'm like, well, I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, so sure enough, he didn't show.
Wow.
And it was Keith Kilgo, Joe Hall,
Yep.
and myself.
Wow.
And I don't know nothing. I don't know a lot. I don't know any jazz really.
Yeah.
I know, you know, and I don't know what we played, but some little jam that I had, and we played like 3 things all night. We repeated things. We played the same thing over and over.
How'd you get?
They hated me.
Yeah, but I mean,
But they thought I could play, but they hated me at the same time. It was like,
wow.
Come on,
what did you do to get this jazz thing? Because you got it.
I don't have it. I just be lying.
Oh man, come on.
So Keith Kilgo liked something in my playing, and then he asked me to come back and play with him.
Gotcha.
He used to
have crosswinds. Crosswinds. Yep.
So he was like, come and play and blah, blah, blah. And so the first time I went to learn tunes at Keith's crib, Keith was chanting. He was living with this woman.
Yeah.
And he was chanting. And you know, I was chanting. What are you doing? So he's like over there, you know, homie Orange.
Wow.
He was doing his thing. Yeah. And I had to wait for him like 10 minutes, and then he came and he had like a little funny little keyboard, and so we start running through a tune, and my reading is horrible, so I'm kind of like trying to figure out what's going on. There's no drum set. 5 minutes into it, the electricity cuts off. It was in Tacoma Park, so electricity gone.
Wow.
And I say, oh, great, I get to go home. No, he was like, he pulled out a melodica. And he wanted me, you know, this typical Keith, right? He pulled out a melodica, wanted me to learn these tunes on the melodica. I'm like, dude, come on, let me go home. Yeah. So I sat there, you know, trudging through these tunes on the melodica. And I learned a handful of tunes, and so I was able to come and do a set with him, because on Thursdays, he used to play, I think, he played first, and then Marshall, I think that's how it was. And then Friday nights, Marshall played. So like that, and then Marshall started hearing me with Keith, and he kind of dug me, and so whatever, that's how it came about, you know. So I had to kind of like, but I also, you know, I kind of fell out at some point, and this is before that. I skipped a chapter. I kind of fell out with a lot of the go-go cats, you know, because when I left Essence, they were I gotta say it, man. They were just taking advantage of me, man.
Yeah,
When I was young, you know.
Yeah.
I was getting paid a pittance.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna get into it, but
Yeah,
so I
yeah.
kept telling them like, yo, can I make some more money? I mean, what's
Yeah,
up? You
yeah.
know? And eventually, Glenn asked me to come and join Chuck, and Chuck was paying,
Yeah.
at that time, $200 a gig
Yeah.
for his starters.
Yeah.
So I was like, hey man,
I got.
I gotta jump.
Yeah.
And I gave him ample time.
Yeah.
But it kind of came off like I just left them to go play with Chuck.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
the rest of the cats didn't know, and by the time I told them, it was like, what?
Yeah.
So there was a lot of animosity toward me,
Yeah.
even though I thought it was completely unfair.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
was. So I kind of, burned that bridge or whatever. But then, we became cool later on. Then and I, to this day, he's in my life.
Yeah.
I brought him into the Maxwell stuff. He played on that stuff, bass and stuff. So, but I went and started playing with Baltimore cats.
Wow.
There was a great guy, I meant to tell you this earlier, but there was a great guy I met named Rock Tipton, who Chuck got some of his jazz stuff from.
You say Rod Templeton?
Rock.
Oh, Rock Templeton.
Rock Tipton, a guitar player from Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Played with Gladys Knight in the Pits, played with Jimmy Smith
Okay.
back in the day, played with a bunch of the Spinners, played with people like that. Sings too, sounded like Lou Rawls a little bit.
Okay.
But played guitar, kind of like George Benson. He's a Pittsburgh guy.
Chuck got some of his stuff?
Yeah, he used to go to Chuck's crib, and Chuck used to hide a tape recorder
Really?
and take some of his licks.
Wow.
So some of the guitar stuff that Chuck got came from Rock Tipton.
Wow.
This legendary cat used to be here for a time. Old timers really know this guy, but I never know anybody that knows him. But Rock taught me the 3 T's in music. The 3 T's in music.
What's that?
Whatever you play, if you play it in tune, in time, and with taste, you can't go wrong.
Wow.
And so Rock was the springboard. I met him through Glenn's cousin, because Glenn Ellis and them, they knew him. Glenn's cousin Ronnie, who was like my brother at the time, introduced me to Rock. And then I met Yogi, this famous drummer from Baltimore. And we were playing, and that's how I met the Baltimore cats. So then
That's a lot of, and they got a lot of music.
I
there.
met Mark Easley,
Yeah.
Dave Carrero, Dave Farrell, Alan Thomas, Coochie Williams. You know Coochie? Alto player.
Yeah.
He's a good player, man.
Yeah.
So I started hanging with the Baltimore cats, which led me to meet James from Pieces of a Dream.
Wow.
And so everything's been like,
Yeah. So talk about, because I wanted to get to Sean Rickman, and then we're gonna get to
Tony, man.
tell me about your friendship, and then we're gonna get to Marcus Miller, and then we're gonna.
I'm terrible. I'm not too many details, man.
You don't have to share.
I gotta learn how to speak from a higher point of
No,
view.
no.
I get too deep into the weeds.
No, I'm just, we doing time thing. So that's, I would sit here all day if we could, but you have your story's long, man. But I'm just trying to get to the end.
Man, shut up, man. Rickman, I met by chance, man. When
I remember when y'all were really tight.
Yeah. No, and that's a brother to me.
Yeah,
definitely. I mean, definitely.
Did y'all had another kindred spirit kind of thing?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it took a minute. I mean, Sean is a very willful, kind of different kind of person.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a couple of things that totally illustrate that. I met Sean in a weird way. When I had that moment where I kind of fell out with the DC vibe, and I was dipping into Baltimore. I had a foot in Baltimore, and I was all in that thing. I met the first time I really met American kids that were not musicians. I had a friend named Paul that I had gone to high school with, but when I was a senior, he was only a freshman, and he didn't talk at all. We used to hang out sometimes on the weekend with a couple of friends that I had in school, and he'd be in the back, and he'd be there because one of the kids was supposed to always give him a ride back to Wheaton, and Paul lived on 16th and Kennedy by Carter Barrett, and dude would never give him the ride, and so Paul would be stuck with us, and he never said a word. But after a while, he started to open up, so he and I became friends. And so one summer, he was lifeguarding at Blair Towers. He became friends with another kid who had a best friend, and then Paul and that kid named Matt became friends. And those kids went to Springbrook in Hillendale, some high school. So I became friends with them because it was like, oh, these are my boys' new friends. I was 22. They were a little younger. But I had never had that experience of like meeting American kids for real. If they weren't involved with music, I had no reason to know anybody. So I kind of started trying to see what that was like. I've been in this country already 4 years and never really had that vibe. And so I started kicking it with them, and they went to this school called Springbrook. And Matt, my boy Matt, and I became closer, and he used to always, they had just graduated from high school, so he used to always show me his yearbook that summer. He showed it to me a bunch of times. And he, of course, he knows I'm a musician and blah, blah. And every time he got to this kid's face, he would go, man, this kid right here is a great drummer. This kid is amazing. You got to meet him. And, so in the summer where, like, this dude is every other week, he's high telling me again about something. Like, after the third time, I say, so where is this kid? I mean, you keep talking about he's a great drummer. Why can't we? You went to school with him. Where is he? Let me meet him. I don't know how to find him. I don't know how to. Him and hawing about, I don't know how to find him. I said, okay. I just remember, Sean Rickman, I saw the name. I saw his chinky-eyed looking self. And the picture, I said, okay, interesting, okay. He had spiky hair, like short, spiky, like punk kind of looking. I said, okay, this kid is a great drummer. Okay, he's just a picture in your yearbook to me. At this point, you're not producing the kid. Where is he? So fast forward 2 years, I think it was 2.5 years later. I love Alan Holsworth, so I go check out Holsworth at some club. I think it was the Birchmere in Virginia. So I went with a guy that I knew, this guitar player, Mark Stanley, who I was friends with, very talented artist and good guitar player. I went with him. Sean Peck, who's a drummer around town, went with another friend of his. And then Rickman went with another friend of his. So it was like 3 duos of guys who didn't know each other. So it's like you and I go somewhere, and then we link up to 2 dudes
that know each other.
That we don't, and then another third 2 dudes. But out of those 4, one of this guy and one of that guy jive like had met each other, and I think this one also kind of knew my guy a little. So it was like all of a sudden I find myself in a cipher of 6 guys, 6 grown ass. 24-year-old. And Sean was 19 at the time, probably. I was 24, 25, and he was 19. And so, we talking, and Sean's got the full,
Did you recognize him as the cat in the
No.
picture? Wow, that's crazy.
I just said to him, I said, man, I know you from somewhere. Because he was very striking. He came what was his name? Charlie Singleton from Cameo. Remember Charlie Singleton?
No.
Guitar player for Cameo.
Okay.
Go check him out. Okay. He's kind of rocked out. Back in the 80s, he had the brother with the full joint. And, the scarves and the rock look. Sean was like that. He had scarves tied to his jeans.
I remember,
And he had long hair. By now it had grown out. And he was all like, and he had this vibe like he was all that. I said, I know you from somewhere. And he goes, nah, man, I don't know you. Like this.
Wow.
He didn't diss me, but he was just matter of fact. I said, you sure, dude? I know you from somewhere. But he didn't fit the Rolodex of all the cats that I knew. So I'm like, I don't know, man. I feel like I know you from somewhere. He's like, yeah, I get that all the time. I guess he was on this rock star tip, right? And I said, okay. We all decide, hey, man, let's go over to Sean Peck's house, this other kid who had a drum set at his crib. Let's go to this house, smoke some weed. So we go there. We're at the crib, and Sean Peck had like a drum set that was a makeshift kit of a bunch of different drum sets. So he had like a 19-piece kit, pretty much. He had like, I think he had maybe double bass. He had a snare. He had a bunch of, because he had like 3 kits in one. So he had like drums galore, this little studio kind of makeshift little vibe, and it was soundproofed and whatever. And so Sean had been drinking like Heinekens, he was throwing them back, and I could tell he was buzzed, it was obvious. And so we were sitting around hanging out, we smoked some weed, and then, he's like, hey man, let me play the drums like this, So I feel like I'm a good musician at that point, you know, because I'm like, you know, and I don't know these other cats that well. I know my boy and what he can do and stuff. So I'm like, and I love the drums, so I'm going, what's this cat gonna do? You know, and by then I had already played with some dope cats. You know, I mean, I played with Juju, with Ricky Wellman, you know, Greg Granger.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Gotcha.
This cat Yogi in Baltimore. I played with some dudes like Keith. I knew, you know, some good drummers. And in Argentina, I played with some great drummers there. So I'm looking at this cat. I'm like, what this? And the drums, maybe as much or more than any other instrument, need motor skills. You've got to have coordination of all your limbs and motor skills. Like you can stand there and play sax and don't have to do nothing with your feet. So I'm saying, this cat is kind of drunk. I mean, he's got a heavy buzz. What's he gonna play? You know? So I'm like checking him out, waiting for him to crash and burn. So he sits behind the kit and he like, you know, hits the toms a couple of times, and, you know, and then he just goes, and like literally in 2 seconds, probably, I realized that this guy can really play.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't take long to hear a difference.
Yeah.
It wasn't the regular thing.
Yeah.
I'm 4 seconds in and I'm going, this little nigga. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
You know, and I can even tell that there's certain things that he missed just because he was a little buzzed, but the drum set is all big and it's not as set, and I could tell, he might have missed a splash here. But still, what he's doing is kind of remarkable, right? So he's like taking this long form solo free, and he's playing and playing, and I'm sitting there like, I can't believe what I'm hearing, you know? But I'm poker faced, you know? Because I'm checking him out, and I'm just like, wow, this cat is super bad. And I'm checking him out. But I still got this thing in the back of my head that's going, I do know this cat from somewhere. Where did I know this cat? And all of a sudden, it hits me.
Wow.
I make the connection. And I said, and I literally, because he finishes the joint, you know, and he's like kind of talking stuff, and I'm still thinking, and all of a sudden it hits me. And literally, I got up and I said, you're that nigga in the picture. Literally.
Wow.
Sean told me he was shocked. He goes, this dude, he called me nigga. I said, you're that nigga in the picture, man. That's literally what I said.
That's exactly what he told me.
That's what I said to him. I said, are you kidding? And he looked at me like, what? I said, dude, you went to high school with, you know, Matt McCombs and King Jordan. You went to Springbrook. He goes, yeah. How do I know you? You went to Springbrook. I said, dude, I met that cat and I told him, I said, all summer long, 3 years ago, this Bama would show me your photo and be like, this cat is super bad. You gotta meet him. And it was like, and I got tired of him telling me that. And now all of a sudden I'm, you know, face to face with the cat.
Man,
it was shocking.
You
know?
had so
And from
many...
that point on, like we became like tight. You know what I mean? And at first our friendship was funny because shortly thereafter he moved to LA and he was hanging out with his father. He got to know his father better, you know, 91. So he was living out there. And our friendship was built over the phone. We kind of started talking and getting to know one another and kind of the way our vibe kind of felt the commonality and then and then the music thing kind of came a little bit later, you know. We only could I would already checked him out. He never really checked me out.
Oh wow.
But whenever I would let him hear something, when he came back to live on this side, and this is the thing I told you, it illustrates a little bit of how he is. I played him, I bet you he didn't tell you this story. I played him some of the recordings that we'd done, like at live cassettes, me and Greg Granger and Marshall at the come stage, and he poo-pooed all over that. Like, I don't want to you guys are like that. And then it was like, okay, cool. And then one day I said, man, you got to check out. I was really heavy into Tribe Called Quest at the time. When that Low End Theory record came out, I was super into it. So I said, man, you got to check out this record. It's unbelievable. I played the cassette. You know, he popped it in and we listened. He listened to about maybe 45, 50 seconds of it. He stopped it. He checked it. This is some bullshit, man.
That's Sean. That's his personality. He said...
Years later, he apologized to me. He said, man, oh, I'm sorry, man. I don't know what I was thinking. I just didn't know. Man, I just didn't know, man. You tried to turn me... You know how he is. You tried to turn me on to it. Damn.
Yeah.
He would be He like blown. He was blown
Yeah.
at the fact that he just ejected Tribe Called Quest and was like, literally, he just here, man.
I can see. I can
take this.
I can. That's his personality, though. I can see that. That's funny.
But he barreled through it because he didn't realize he was about to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah.
And we did.
Yeah. Wow, that's funny, man.
He did.
Anyway, we gonna. I just want you briefly. How'd you hook up with Marcus Miller? Because you've been playing with Marcus.
You know, the thing I was talking about before, the luck thing is
Really?
something. I mean, yeah, man. I mean, you know, I was lucky. I mean, you saw the connected dots in my life and how it all went down. I mean,
do you get nervous, like when you said, okay, the cat called it? I mean, you play with a lot of people, like Chaka Khan. Do you get nervous when you are you
sure,
Yeah,
of course. I mean,
really?
yeah, no, definitely. I mean,
Okay.
you know, you. I mean, I don't know if. Yeah, I definitely. You know.
Okay.
There's two main things that I think are worth kind of rescuing or highlighting, you know, from the sit down. You asked earlier about, like, you know, I've done all these different things with some great artists and played big stages and this and that, but man, when it comes to playing music, it doesn't really, like, that to me doesn't matter, like how big or small the stage is or whatever.
You always see you
What really matters is whether you having a good night. Are you getting to something that's magical, or are you able to at least get to your own stuff?
Yeah,
You know,
you don't get like star-eyed about.
I mean, I'm human, so I mean,
There's a story about you and Oprah Winfrey. We ain't gonna,
the moment, the moment sometimes can be overwhelming. You know, sure. I mean, of course. I mean, you know, like when we did the VH1 honors with Herbie.
Yeah.
Of course, there was a certain sense of, but I knew the stuff like the back of my hand. We had just, even though we had just come up with the arrangement. That was a crazy story. We won't go into it, but maybe you save it for another time. But like, you know, we changed the game on Herbie from one day to the next, man.
Wow.
This cat, yeah, man. We had this. There was a song that Me'Shell did on the Red Hot and Cool first album, where it was like, you know, jazz cats with hip hop cats.
Yeah.
So Me'Shell had a tune on there called Nocturnal Sunshine with Herbie on it.
Okay.
I played on that same record, but I subbed for Joe Sample when Joe had his open heart surgery.
Okay. Yeah.
So Wawa Watson, who was my dear friend, the guitar player for the Headhunters, he called me to sub for Joe on this. It was Wawa, Lester Bowie, Joe Sample, with Digable Planets.
Wow.
And so Joe couldn't make the session, so I came in and subbed for Joe. So it became like Wawa Watson and Lester Bowie and Digable Planets. And so I was on that same record, but we did the VH1 honors, so Herbie, it was like half Headhunters and half us. Gene was out of town and couldn't do it, so Harvey Mason played drums. And so we had a couple of days of camera blocking and rehearsal and this and that. And Herbie didn't remember. Wawa comes up to me, he goes, man, look, man, Herbie's always late. You might as well just write a little bit of a chart for him. Like, you're going to want to read something.
Yeah.
I said, okay, cool. So I jotted down, like, as best I could, just the chords, you know, the chord changes of the tune, because he couldn't remember. He came in, did the session.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, I helped him in camera. I gave him the little chart or whatever. You know, we did the joint, camera blocking. The next day we were doing a real rehearsal. Because, you know, camera blocking is like, they want to get the length of the song, who's doing what, when.
Gotcha.
We did that, and then the next day we were doing a real rehearsal at Center Staging in LA, where it was just no cameras, just us dealing with the music. Well, Herbie, after the rehearsal, Herbie goes, and Me'Shell walks up to me, she goes, look, you deal with Herbie, I'll deal with Harvey.
Wow.
She wanted to be on top of the drums. But she's like, you deal with Herbie.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah.
So, you know, I'm very tactfully and diplomatically helping, but Herbie's super, you know, he's like us. He's open about the music. So he's like, hey, man, show me, you know what I mean? So I kind of reminded him some of the chords of the tune, and he was reading, and then he's doing his thing, and he's being Herbie and killing it. So then after the camera blocking, it was a couple hours of us playing together, and then he comes up to me and goes, hey, man, I'm sorry. Tomorrow I'll know the tune better. I just didn't have a chance to get to it. And I was like, man, dude, I ain't worried about you. You're... The next day, Me'Shell in the morning calls me. She goes, come down to my room, because she knew I had like a little bit of an auditory, photographic vibe happening. She's like, come down to my room. Her and Ned are in her room. He was the bass player too in the group at the time. They were in her room, and they changed the complete arrangement of the tune. Different bass line, different key.
Wow.
Now it was in B flat. The tune was in E minor. Now we're in B flat.
Wow.
And it's like a whole nother vibe, different arrangement, some hits, some different stuff. The only thing that was the same was like the solo section, kind of. And so I'm like, okay, now I got to remember this thing.
You got to tell Herbie. You got to.
Herbie is notoriously late sometimes. Like, we were in rehearsal, we were standard staging later that day, and he's a little bit late, a lot late. He could be like an hour and a half late, 2 hours. He comes out of the limo, he's got this big sandwich, and the first thing he does, I'm standing outside, getting some air. First thing he does, he comes up to me, he goes, "Hey man, I charted out the whole joint," and he opens up like this, and he got handwritten score paper, 4 or 5 pages stuck together, right? Every, like, the voicing of the chorus, all this stuff, like, written out by hand.
Wow.
And I got to tell this cat that all that paper, he might as well just ball it up and make paper airplanes out of it. That was an experience, man. But he took it like it was nothing. He was like, "Okay, cool, well, no problem, man."
Wow,
whatever.
that's crazy.
And
That's crazy.
So that was an amazing moment in life, man. But why did I tell you this story?
Marcus, we trying to get to Marcus Miller.
I'm getting there, Antonio. It's just the proximity of being in Me'Shell's band afforded me visibility. Having such a sort of kind of important role. I mean, I was the only harmonic. Well, no, there was a guitar player, but the music had all these colors and stuff, and I had a lot of keyboards, and just gave me a lot of visibility. You know what I mean? Wow. We were in New York a lot, and so I met a lot
all on
of
YouTube.
We were in LA a lot, because when she lived in New York, then she moved to LA. She lived in Berkeley, so it gave me visibility, man. And one time, Marcus was hounding her to do that song "Rush Over," so he came to our gig. We used to do. There was a room on Robinson and Santa Monica Boulevard off of Robertson called Luna Park. It was a beautiful little club, and that was kind of like Me'Shell's lab. So whenever it was new stuff, we'd go there. And Marcus was hounding her to come and play on this tune. He couldn't lock her in, so he came to the gig. He came to the gig and ended up sitting in on the encore.
Wow.
And Marcus told me this himself. I got the cassette. David Dyson and Me'Shell put a hurting on that fool that night.
Wow.
Because they were,
Yeah.
I mean, it's Marcus Miller.
Yeah.
So he jumps up, but he had the disadvantage of jumping up on stage cold.
Yeah.
We've been playing a 2-hour show.
Oh, wow.
We're playing the encore, and he comes on stage.
Yeah.
And Dyson, that's like one of his idols, right?
Yeah.
So he wants to show him like what he can do. And Me'Shell is Me'Shell, so like they wore him out. Marcus told me too, because I talked about this with him. And so years later, he just called me.
You want me to keep that in the video?
Yeah, it's a beautiful story.
Okay.
This was 96.
Okay.
I have the cassette. This was 96. Right. And then Marcus kind of, liked me, gave me a good vibe, but out of nowhere, he called me in 2008. Wow. Out of nowhere. To join this band, And so his manager called me, and I said, "Yeah, I'll be glad." And then about a couple months later, but with this band called Gaia that I was telling you, with Gregoire and Jean, Gregoire was in Marcus's band at the time. Okay. So we had Marcus play the bass chair, because I was the bass player, but we had Marcus play bass with us at a show in Geneva.
You play bass too?
No.
Okay.
On the trio, I played
I got you.
keyboard bass.
Yeah.
But on this one gig, we had Marcus sit in. It was 06. So he came and so I think he got a little more closer to my musicality. And from there, he called me in 2008. And then before we even played a note, a week later, his manager called me back and she told me about SMV. Yeah. Stanley, Marcus, and Victor. And so she was like, "Beautiful. There's also this other band, and Marcus wants to know if you'd be interested in doing it, blah, blah, blah." And I was like, "Yeah." So before I even ever played a note in Marcus's band, I was already going to do the other tour with Stanley and them cats too.
Wow.
So it just happens by luck, man, sometimes,
Well, you blessed and highly favored, man.
Yeah, that is true,
But man, we got to move.
We
got to move.
No,
we be here for 10 hours. But I want to ask you some final questions, man, real quick.
I have once again worn out my welcome, man.
No.
God,
this is just we have to have an ending. We have to have a what they say.
I went out like Rigman that time.
Yeah. So, how's the wife and kids?
They're well.
Good. Beautiful. What has being a husband and father been like for you?
I mean, it's been great, man, but I haven't always measured up, I feel.
Okay. And what's next because your discography, man, like you made a lot. It's like you made a lot of money in music.
No.
Because
Really?
you're
Where is it? No, man.
Oh, okay.
No, my discography is not that extensive at all. It's just, it's choice. It's one of those like quality over quantity kind of situations.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I did play
But
in
you
a
own
lot of stuff,
you own
but
a lot of stuff,
stuff that people don't know about and
Yeah.
that nobody's gonna know
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
But I was lucky, but it's not like that. It's not like
Yeah, I wanted to talk about you as a lead, emergent, your group.
Yeah, I don't know what to call it. I
Okay.
mean, there's one iteration which
Okay.
I like to call the Emergence Quartet or the Emergence.
So have you
Trio.
recorded, like, put a recording out?
No, which I
Okay.
need to.
So that's
It's
what's
been
next?
years.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's got to be.
yeah, yeah.
I'm
looking forward to
It's
that,
a
man.
weird thing that I have with that. And people say, man, you're in your mid-50s. How come you never put a record out?
Yeah, that's...
And I got a ton of music. And
Yeah.
why you never put a record? My wife hates that about me.
Wow.
And, I don't know. Some of it is weird. I don't know what it is, why I haven't done it. Part of it, I know one thing. Part of it is that a little bit of the curse and blessing of versatility. I'm still old school, and I want a record to have an arc.
Gotcha.
And I don't want to do a record in which it has a funk tune and a fusion tune and a trio jazz ballad
Yeah,
kind of vibe
yeah,
and
yeah.
a this and a.
Yeah.
I want there to be a unifying thread, but
Okay.
people say to me, "Well, you'll be the unifying thread because no matter what kind of music you're playing, you always sound like you," and that's a good point. So maybe I have to approach it from that standpoint. And after a while, all of this that I just told you starts to sound like an excuse to me too. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, you know what? I would say this.
Maybe I'm just a lazy,
as we get
no
older,
good person.
but as we get older, man,
I like how you let that go by.
well,
No, go ahead.
No,
we
I
get
was in the thought.
Yeah.
But as we get older, this is why I hope to see you have something out, man, because it becomes about your legacy. I mean, even though you're documented, I see you all on YouTube.
No, I know what you mean.
But to like when I put stuff out, man. I ain't even trying. It ain't about. It should be about self, but part of my legacy. I was here, and this is where I was at this period. This was my level at this period, and so I think your legacy, what you leave behind, because we're not here forever. You understand what I'm saying? So your music to me survives you, and doing a project, that's something that's what's the word? I'm looking for a word. I can't find it. It's something that you actually, like you say, it shows your mindset and what your thoughts are, your compositions that people need to hear. Like I know cats, man, they got
Do
great
people really need to hear it?
Yeah, man.
Why?
Because you're a unique individual, and as musicians, I believe we're sharing with the world. Like sometimes it ain't about money for me. I just want to share. I want to share who I am. I mean, your music is almost like a reflection of who you are in a sense, right? So I think that
What happens maybe if you don't really like who you are?
well, man, that's another kind of challenge.
See how I turn the tables on you, man?
Yeah,
now
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
interviewing you.
But you know what? If you completed the song, then you had to like it, right?
Oh, that is a whole nother set.
Yeah. But I'm saying, that's a legitimate question. We all on the search, I guess, we all got whatever we dealing with. But just dealing with music, man, you got so much. You probably got so much music that only you heard, that nobody's. So it's like, the world wants to hear it. I tell Warren Shad that, man. Warren Shad, he doesn't move, because he got music. He let me hear some stuff he produced. I'm like, dude, and he didn't put out because of whatever. I'm like, well, just put it out. But we want the situation to be this. We want it to be perfect. But
Yeah, that's true.
that's
been a bit of a problem.
But as we get
for me,
older, man, put out. I knew a cat named Lawrence Wheatley, jazz cat, and Lawrence had all these songs he wrote. But I don't know if people heard him but him, and he passed. And so, who knows? When I see his son, I said, man, you gonna put your dad's music out every time I see his son? Yeah, I'll get to it, whatever.
Well, don't bury me just yet.
No.
No, but I understand what you're saying, man. I struggle sometimes.
No, it's cool, man. But I want to encourage you.
Well, I appreciate that. I really do, man. I really do. Because sometimes, my own insecurities, and as musicians, we all have them. And those that don't think, there are those who do a great job of hiding them. There are those who have a healthy relationship to them and function well.
I have mine.
And then there's those who carry the burden of it and admit it,
Yeah, it's all good, man. But I'm from musician to musician, man. Whatever.
I appreciate that, man. I
Man.
appreciate it. I mean, I'll try to solve for X at some point. At some point this
Well,
year.
let me ask you.
And go in some direction and do something.
Yeah. So we got one more question. If people wanted to hear your music and learn more about you, how could they get in touch with you?
That's it. They can't. That's why I got to do a record. That's why I got to make a record.
That is funny, man.
Come to my house. I'll sequester you.
They can go to Facebook,
I'll
though, right?
kidnap you.
You on Facebook, right?
Yeah, I'm on
They
Facebook.
can find. But y'all on YouTube and
Yeah, if you search
Twitter, you Twitter?
Obviously no. I mean, I do have a Twitter account, but I don't pay attention to it. I have an Instagram account, which I got to be more involved in. I haven't done a whole lot. See what I'm saying, Antonio, man? There's a part of me that is a little reticent about selling myself. I'm not very good or willing to kind of sell myself and put myself out there like that. But, everything can be, you never know what is the motivation. Like you can say, oh, wow, what a humble cat. And one can say, well, maybe that's not too humble. Maybe that's just really high-minded. Maybe you think too highly of yourself that, you're not going to stoop to the level to sell yourself or to promote your own stuff. It all depends on the motivation and where you're coming from. I have a tendency to overthink things, and that's true. Yeah. I enjoy.
So you might need representation. You might need somebody to do that for you.
Maybe, but ultimately, I think the biggest piece for me is, just to your point, kind of getting out of my own way a little bit, and not think about it so deeply, and kind of just go like, let me just do something that I like that I can live with.
Yeah.
I mean, there's stuff out there on Marcus Records and Me'Shell Records and Maxwell Records and whatever, whatever.
Well, that tells one thing about you, that you are, life is about service. And when you help enhance, like you did my project, that's you providing a service of your gift. Because you took my thing, man, and like I said, wow, so that
means a lot, man. I don't take none of it for granted, man.
Yeah, man. Anyway, man, dude, I can sit. One thing you can do, you can talk, and you have stories, which
that's the best thing. I do have some stories.
Man, that's what it's about. Especially if you passing information down, you have a wealth. I mean, because we could literally, and I would love to be here and
I know, man.
But I can't. But you gave us enough, and man, and I'm grateful, man, because I got to know a little bit more about you.
Right. And that's my hope. I hope that you're walking away going like, wow, there's some things about this cat that I had no idea about.
Man, this is why we do this, man. It's like,
and it's not really even about me, but like the stories of the music and that thing I was talking about earlier about the brotherhood of music.
Yeah.
I still feel that I want to get back to that. Like you say, you were as excited as you were when you were a kid. Hurt and disappointment does a lot to kind of to taint the spirit of the music.
Yeah.
But Maradona said about soccer, he said,
Yeah.
I may have done a lot of dirty, stupid things in my life, but the ball can't be stained. And it's the same thing for me in the music. I may have done a lot of bad things, and I may not have always measured up as a human being, and I know these things, but the music can't suffer for it.
Yeah. I think you've done an excellent job, man. I mean,
you're too kind.
No, I'm not. BS.
I did a pretty nice job on your track, though.
Yeah.
It was a challenge.
You did a great job, man.
I had to try to find where to put my thing in.
And a great job, man. I got to put it out.
My favorite thing is the sound I got.
Yeah, man, it was, I'm telling you, man.
You over there singing.
Yeah.
Is that Christy out here in the background?
Huh?
Is that Christy, too? Who's in the background also?
Isn't
there a girl
you mean
the end?
the joint you just did for me?
Yeah.
That's Christy, yeah.
I thought so.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, toward the back.
Anyway, man, thank you for
your R&B
sharing.
revelation. You're a contemporary.
I love all this.
You're a revelation.
Man,
you're ready to be out there singing. And,
no, I'm not going to. Well, I'm going to add some other
man.
singers. But
just put a little lip gloss on you. You'll be all right.
Oh, man, you funny. Federico, thank you, brother.
Thank you for having
Hey, man,
me,
for
I
sharing your story, man.
Thank you.
Man, this is beautiful. This is a conversation in jazz. You've been listening to a conversation with the great Federico Pena. And yeah, there it is. We see you on the next one.
Like Georgia, we were there.
All right. Man.